I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the April 2nd, 2024 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Please join, Councilor Hanson will offer the land acknowledgement to get us started.
Thank you, Mayor. We acknowledge and honor the original people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Iracootsum Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse, vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on, the tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geographical area of the Ashland watershed, including the original past, present, and future indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Tequilma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quacacá, where the crow lights that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
I'm going to do it tonight. Okay. Councilor Hanson?
Here.
Councilor Duquesne?
Here.
Here.
Mayor Graham?
Here.
Microphone went off, sorry.
Here.
Councilor Bloom?
Here.
Councilor Hyatt?
Here.
For the mayor's announcements, there are just a couple. The first is you will notice that we have new microphones this evening, which are hopefully making it easier for you all to hear in the back. They are, however, you'll notice that whichever one is red is live, and so we're still getting used to the whole process of when we have to turn our microphones back on, so bear with us a bit. We may have to repeat ourselves a couple of times if we realize we're not mic'd. I also want to just announce that because we have a significant issue this evening that is that we have a lot of people signed up for on the agenda, and we also have a large number of people who have come to speak to us during public forum. The public forum time will be limited to 1 minute. So I wanted to give everyone who is here to speak for public forum enough warning so that you can get your thoughts together in terms of condensing them to 1 minute. And that allows us, with the agenda item that is here, to make sure that we can give people at least 2 minutes during the item that will be decided this evening. I also want to make sure, I think everyone probably knows this, but the forms to sign up, the speaker request forms, are in the back alongside the wall. If you are looking to talk with us this evening, please make sure that you fill those out and give them to Alyssa. And make sure that you let us know if you're here for public forum, which is for items that are not on the agenda, or if you have come to speak to us about an agenda item, and that will help us bring you up at the right time. We have, we'll start today with an Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim that the first full week of April, as designated by the Oregon State Legislature, is Oregon's Arbor Week in the City of Ashland, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Week and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Just make sure you plant them in the right place because of fire danger. Thank you. Next, we have the approval of minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick one on the business meeting from the 19th, page 10, halfway down. It says 99,000, should be 990,000. So it's just a quick scrivener, if we can update that, and I'm happy to offer the motion.
Yes.
I move approval of the minutes with the change as presented.
Is there a second? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
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 And there it is. We are now to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. A few things. Staff is working with Finance and Public Works to get accurate information about the water treatment plant out into the public sphere. So we have created an FAQ page at ashland.or.us/waterplant. This is a source of conversation in the community, so we want to make sure that everyone has the correct information. We are also working with a local vendor to get the window awnings at City Hall replaced. You may have noticed that they are fraying and breaking, and so that is part of our downtown beautification program. The April newsletter is out on our website. It will also go out on our utility bill inserts. We are currently moving ahead with the website with scheduled training, and we are hoping to have the new website up and operational towards the end of May and early June, so we are very excited about that. We are now can be found on Instagram and Nextdoor as part of our communication survey. Those were recommended as outlets for communicating with our community, so we can now be found there. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are to, Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Something that our city manager pro tem did not mention that I wanted to just celebrate, that I saw that the Community Development Department has been notified regarding manufactured home park zoning. And that's such a plus. That's something that we worked on regarding our housing production strategy, and to be able to see that it's funded and it's moving forward. I just think we should celebrate our good things too. So that's a good thing. Thank you so much, Community Development Department. I don't see Brandon, but thank you.
Thank you. So we are now to public forum. And as I mentioned earlier, everyone will have 1 minute. I will call you up. You'll come up to these two microphones here. Please come up 2 at a time, and be ready to come on when when the people ahead of you move on. I will let you all know the next 2 ahead of time so you can be ready. Alyssa will give you a signal at 10 seconds to the end of your time this evening, and then when she gets to the 1 minute mark, she'll give you a double signal. And at that point, we just ask that you finish the sentence you're on, and then move on so that we can get the next person up. We also have a lot of folks I've noticed here tonight that are on specific topics, and we do have an allowance. I realize that not only having a 1 minute doesn't really maybe feel as good as it should. And so we do allow a hand signal, this hand signal, if you agree with what the speaker is saying. There is no acceptable hand signal if you disagree. But if you do agree with something the person up here says, then you can silently put your hands up here. And that allows the council to understand the way the larger crowd is feeling. So we will move on and get started here. We'll start with Linda Adams, and then we have Sydney Brown, and then behind them will be Derek Franklin and Mark Brouillard. Please say your name and the community you reside in at the start of your testimony.
Linda Adams. I live down Oak Street in Ashland. It's easy to forget the dedication of the people who keep our community running. From the unassuming staff members processing permits or filling potholes, to the elected officials navigating complex decisions, to the volunteers of our committee, commissions, and nonprofits. They all play a vital role. These public servants work tirelessly to address a vast array of needs, often with limited resources. It is critically important to acknowledge the tightrope council and staff walk. Our public officials grapple with complex issues at every turn around the corner that have no easy answers. Any decision will inevitably displease some portion of the population because the challenges faced lack clear-cut solutions. While criticism can be a healthy part of the process, it's important to remember the genuine effort put in to find solutions that benefit the greater good, our common good. My utmost gratitude for listening, for deliberating, and for making those hard decisions.
Thank you.
Sydney Brown, I live in Ashland. I want to thank the councilors and the mayor for all of your efforts on behalf of the SEEP and the SEEP goals, and to encourage you to continue to look at the electrification ordinance. I believe some of the people here are for this. We saw on the look-ahead schedule that we are tentatively scheduled for June 17th for a work-study session. I'd like the council to commit to that date so that we can keep our momentum going. And also that the ordinance, the electrification ordinance, is listed as a natural gas ordinance, but it is in fact a climate action policy package. Thank you.
Thank you. As the next two speakers are coming up, I just want to remind the audience that we do not allow signs inside the chamber. So if you have a paper that you are wanting to put up, we need you to hold it down. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Brillard, City of Ashland, or lives in the City of Ashland. The following is from the National Institute of Health, Florida Institute of University Research, and American Psychology Association. Years of repeated exposure to the same message can have various psychological and physiological effects on individuals. Here are some potential health effects of having someone or group say the same thing month after month, meeting after meeting. Cognitive fatigue, which is memory problems. Emotional distress, which is things like anxiety. Boredom. Desensitization, such as indifference. Physical health. It can actually lead to chronic health problems, including cardiovascular disease and weakened immune systems. Social effects can cause conflicts and disagreements. Overall, while occasional repetition can serve as a reinforcement or clarification, excessive repetition without variation or content may have detrimental effects on an individual's mental, emotional, and physical well-being. It is essential to consider the frequency, content, and repetitive of messages. It's kind of like not having a lawyer show up for a posted public meeting.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, Sabrina, have we been able to repair the sound out in the foyer?
Yes. People can hear. There's a slight delay, so the doors need to remain closed.
Okay. So I will call again Derek Franklin, and then we have David Beckermeyer.
I'm on two agenda items. Did I write mine in the non-agenda box?
Are you Derek Franklin?
Yes.
Yes. I have you here for climate.
Can you put me in is that the agenda item, isn't it?
The
climate isn't that.
Climate is not the agenda item this evening.
Oh, okay, so I am talking then. I am just wanting to reiterate that even though I love the climate people, please do not take away our gas stoves. We love them, and we don't want to see the electric ones end up in places they shouldn't be. So, yes, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We then have David Beckermeyer, and then Flavia Franco, and Cynthia Taylor, and Sydney Brown.
I am David Beckermeyer, and I am an Ashland resident. The issue that I wanted to address this evening is the completion of the Ashland Electrification and Clean Air Ordinance, for which the Ashland Youth for Electrification is campaigning. As SOCAN member, we strongly support their efforts. As mentioned before, there is a tentative study session scheduled for June 17th for the natural gas ordinance next steps, and we thank you for placing that on the schedule. But we urge that it be made a confirmed session with a robust discussion. We urge the interim city manager, the interim city attorney, and the council to move the proposal forward as soon as possible and create a powerful ordinance. This ordinance is critical in addressing indoor air pollution and protecting our children and the elderly. To clarify, there is no clean natural gas. In fact, it's a health hazard composed of 70 to 90% methane and extremely toxic. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just wanted to ask the audience, we've received a request to ask anyone who does not need to have their cell phone or any other wireless device on to please turn that off for the duration of this meeting. So please, if you can do that, if you're not using your devices right now, please turn them off, or at least into airplane mode is what I understand is acceptable. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Flavia Franco, and I live in Ashland. Greetings to the mayor, city council, and staff. Please present the Ashland Climate and Clean Air Policy Package that Ashland youth have been asking for to the Ashland City Council so they can vote on it. The first two solutions that United Nations has listed for actions we can take to address climate change are to save energy at home and to change your home's source of energy. This ordinance gives owners of new homes a chance to keep their carbon footprint low. Avoiding gas appliances is so much cheaper in new construction than retrofitting existing homes. This ordinance is a good place for the city to make progress on its climate action goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cynthia Taylor, Sydney Brown, Maroon Aguero, and Jan Inada.
Hello, council members. My name is Cynthia Taylor. I live in Ashland. I did not sign up to speak, but since you called my name, I will go ahead and ask that the council move forward on the climate action plan that the youth are supporting. They have expressed themselves very well in their concerns about the time, and we know that original times for critical points in our climate chaos have actually accelerated, and the youth are the ones who are going to feel the greatest impact of this. And I, as an elder, support their efforts, and the electrification in particular, I think is really important. I have a air filter that goes off every time I use my gas stove. I've switched to an induction oven as much as possible, and it is a real concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Some of the forms that we have coming in this evening are on a larger sheet of paper, so there may be some confusion about who has signed up, but I'm only calling the names of people I have documents for. So the next folks up are Maroon Aguero, Jan Inada, Sitka Moss, and Amanda Morehouse.
Good evening, Mayor Graham, members of Ashland City Council, and my fellow community members. My name is Maroon Aguero, and I'm a community organizer at Road Climate. As a resident of Ashland, I'm deeply concerned about the increasing intensity of climate impacts we're experiencing and the lack of meaningful progress towards our climate goals. I'm here to speak in support of the Climate and Clean Air Policy Package and encourage City Council to pass these common sense policies without delay. I want to thank the Climate and Environment Policy Advisory Committee for putting so much work and intention into moving forward a policy package of transitioning new homes off fossil fuels and towards meeting Ashland's climate goal. It's reassuring that there is a tentative date for council to review the proposed policy package on June 17th. I urge City Council and City staff to commit to June 17th to continue moving the policy package further without delay. These policies are not just about protecting our environment. They're about safeguarding the health and well-being of our community members, especially the most vulnerable to the impact of climate change and pollution. Living in homes with gas appliances are awful. Will City Council and the City of Ashland commit to a study session of the Climate and Clean Air Policy Package on June 17th at the latest?
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sam Inada. 1580 Lilac Circle. We come here yet again to ask for the City Council to come together to put forth a resolution for a ceasefire on the agenda and for all councilors to unanimously sign a letter for a ceasefire. The Talent City Council sent a letter on November 16th, 2023 to Oregon elected leaders urging an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East and to end military aid to Israel. I'm deeply saddened and horrified by the loss of all innocent life in this conflict and that it has been allowed to go on for this long, Councillor Jason Clark said in an email. Clark drafted the one-paragraph letter that was endorsed by the Talent City Council and signed by Mayor Darby Ayers Flood. The November 16th letter states, I, Mayor Darby Ayers Flood, on behalf of myself and the City Council of the City of Talent, motivated by deep compassion for all people who are suffering from the horrific, ongoing atrocities in Palestine and Israel, urge you to demand an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages and arbitrarily detained people on both sides, humanitarian aid to help the Palestinian people recover, and the suspension of further military funding to Israel. This is all that we are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Sitka Moss, Amanda Morehouse, Yvonne Atkinson, and Nicole Kemmer.
My name is Sitka Moss. Hello, everyone. After 2 weeks of assault on the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip, the Al-Shifa Hospital, here are some accounts of the site of the surrounding areas. Hossam Shabbat, a journalist in Gaza, said, quote, Israeli occupation forces executed over 300 Palestinians in and around the hospital, and this morning I have witnessed hundreds of bodies outside of the hospital. There wasn't one full body. All of them were either pieces or heavily mutilated. The bodies were in horrific conditions. Many had their hands and legs tied, and some were even flattened by bulldozers. Many of the bodies were burned and left to be crushed to pieces. Several were decomposed and partly eaten by stray dogs. Most of them were completely unrecognizable. Families could only identify them by their clothing. Witnesses have stated that among the dead are known doctors and nurses from the Al-Shifa Hospital, and the small hands of children are visible. 2 of the bodies, despite being dismembered, have been identified as a medical doctor and her son. The hospital itself is a scene of devastation. Over 1,000 homes have been leveled, and the complex stands starkingly as a graveyard and will go down in history as the largest massacre since the Nakba in 1948. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Amanda Morehouse. Today I'll be sharing the voice of Muna Shakur, a Palestinian woman. I will not change any of her words. Quote, if you think what's happening in Palestine and what's happening specifically to the children in Gaza is so far away from you and it does not affect you, please think again. If the world continues to allow these monsters to do what they're doing now in Palestine, who's to say they're not going to allow them to do it anywhere else in the world? Not just to our babies, not just to our women, not just to our men, but yours. I'm not asking you to care about the Palestinians. I'm asking you to care about the world that you also live in. This is not only a Palestinian story. This is a global story in which what you allow to happen to Palestinians, you're allowing to happen to the whole world, including where you are.
Thank you. And just a reminder also that we do not have clapping or vocal shows of support for what people are saying here. We have Yvonne Atkinson and then Nicole Kemmer, Ancient Hatfield, and Catherine Green.
Yvonne Atkinson, Eagle Point. I'm here to speak to you as a fellow human and to appeal to your compassion.
Miss Atkinson, can you just get a
Sorry.
little closer to there?
Is that better? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
I'm nervous. To ask for your compassion about a ceasefire resolution in Gaza. I'm a parent of a child born with many medical issues, including epilepsy, and 4 years ago she had a kidney transplant that saved her life. But she's on medication that she has to take daily to keep her alive. And the only difference between her and these children in Gaza is where she was born. And if she were there, she would be dead now. And I see these children there and I think, you know, their doctors are being killed and they don't have access to medical, and it could be any one of us. So I'm asking you to look at these families and these women and these children and see yourself and your families, and to take a moment and think about your families. And I ask that you add a resolution for a ceasefire to your agenda.
Thank you. Nicole Kemmer, Ancient Hatfield, Catherine Green, and Ronan Wayside. Go ahead. Nicole's not here, so we'll go ahead and go to Ancient Hatfield and Catherine Green, please.
Okay. I'm Ancient Hatfield. In just 2 weeks since we've been here, the hunger in Palestine has quickly reached famine status. Another 1,000 innocent lives lost, and the Biden administration quietly transferred $2.5 billion of arms to support Israel's 75-year-old war in Palestine. While we do not consent, we are watching in real time what the Israeli occupation does with our tax dollars. The war crimes are being posted, and they clearly punctuate the IOF's intent of genocide. Every day, we watch in horror the atrocities the IOF commits on nearly exclusively civilians. We ask you again, the people we have empowered to be our voice, to call for a ceasefire. Let us be the ones brave enough to say we oppose this war. I tell you from my heart to yours, if you continue to stay silent and compliant, you are perpetrating the mind disease of apathy. We ask you to be our voice and you say nothing. You will lose our confidence. When we lose our confidence in you, you will lose us completely.
Thank you. Catherine Green and Ronan Wayside.
Hi, my name is Catherine Green. I am a resident of Ashland outside the city limits, moved here some 12 years ago. It is a special place. I've tried to make this argument before the council before. It is a village of healers. Some of the most awake, aware, well-educated people you will find anywhere in the world live here. You wisely recognize the indigenous people who lived here before us. Where are they? They're not here anymore. I've got to tell you, a lot of my friends aren't here anymore. And it's been the actions of government that made them leave. I go back to states that treated their population more kindly over the past couple years, and they're booming, they're thriving, okay? That's not happening in Oregon. We're watching a degradation of life here that is stunning. It is really important for the people of Ashland to wake up and realize that some of the choices we're making are not wise. And I would say that electromagnetic radiation is a severe health consequence for all life. The Native Americans gave you a prophecy. They said that when the trees start dying from the tops down, to beware. That is happening here. You can talk to Ed Bagley. He is a PhD biophysicist.
Thank you.
And he will tell you we are at a million times background.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronan Wayside, David McAllister, and Judy Emanuel.
My name is Bren Wayside. I'm a resident in Ashland and a local social worker. I'm calling the City Council to give aid into a statewide call for ceasefire in the Israeli occupation. As many people may know, a few days ago, Israel targeted the World Central Kitchen by bombing 3 vehicles with volunteers inside, killing 7 people, one of them being a U.S. citizen. The vehicles all had large stickers on the top of the vehicles identifying them as volunteers with the World Central Kitchen, which we know is a nonprofit responsible for supplying most of the humanitarian food aid into Gaza, one of the backbone food aid organizations. Cars were all bombed within the same day and within just a few miles of each other. The coordinated movements must have been intentional. The technology was able to view the identifying labels on the vehicles. Additionally, 240 tons of aid from the Central World Kitchen heading to Gaza was turned around. So we ask for your attention and call to action. Thank you.
Thank you. David McAllister and Judy Emanuel.
I'm Dr. Judy Emanuel.
Okay.
I have 2 issues. One is that we are allowing so much growth in Ashland, but if there were ever a fire, we do not have the infrastructure to handle the number of cars that would be on Siskiyou Boulevard and 99, and it would make like Lahaina look like a picnic. So let's hope that never happens, but it would be a really good thing if the council would start thinking about what we need to do to protect our citizens. That's number one. Number two, I understand, and I may be wrong, that the new trash cans with pictures on them are $5,000 each. Am I correct? Does anybody know?
Just so you know, the council rules, we don't respond to
Okay.
folks when they're speaking to us.
Well, I would like everyone in this room to know that spending $5,000 on great big trash cans that we really don't need, because the ones we have are attractive enough, we could have hired somebody for a small amount of money, a poor artist, to paint them if we wanted. It is an entirely disgraceful use of our tax money to buy brand new and, in my opinion, not so attractive trash cans. Thank you.
Thank you. David McAllister, and then John Maurer and Sally Mix.
Good evening, council members.
Yes, please get in as close as you can to that microphone.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
I'd just like to speak a few words in support of the Ashland electrification and clean air ordinance. I understand that there has been a recommendation from CPAC almost 3 months ago in favor of this ordinance. And I'd like to point out that it's of extreme importance when you consider the condition of the climate, and that every single one of us and our representatives need to take action as soon as possible before we hit a tipping point where we can no longer control the heat and other detrimental effects of what's happening to the climate. So thank you for letting me speak about this.
Thank you. John Maurer, Sally Mix, Tony Foster, and Jamie Powell.
Thank you for my minute. I'm here to praise you. I was here a week ago. I've been a physician and resident of Ashland for 50 years. I chaired the school board that closed 2 elementary schools. I understand contentious issues. I understand emotions that bind and have the capacity to blind. Mayor, you were exemplary. Last week, 2 weeks ago, your style and grace in dealing with a lack of decorum was wonderful. Mr. Dale was attacked, came back a visionary. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. You all had your homework done last meeting. You're to be commended, and I'm proud that you're at the helm during these difficult times. Thank you for my minute.
Thank you.
If I could approach.
To Alyssa, please.
Osio, this is Sally Mix again. I live here on Mountain Avenue in Ashland, Oregon. I'd like to bring up another issue with you besides the concentration camp and the current genocide in Gaza. We have here in America some real estate companies from Israel, and they're organizing illegal real estate sales across the U.S., and they could be coming to a city near you or us. This real estate is stolen Palestinian land in the West Bank. Not only are these sales illegal and are a violation of international law, but they violate many of our anti-discrimination laws. In the cities and towns where they are happening here on U.S. soil. On March 10th, there was a private real estate sale in Teaneck, New Jersey. And March 12th, in Lawrence, Long Island, New York. And on March 13th in Brooklyn, New York. Wado, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Tony Foster, and Jamie Powell.
All right. My name is Tony Foster, and I'm an Ashland community member. Just yesterday, 7 members of the World Central Kitchen who were bringing aid into Gaza have been killed by an IDF strike. Despite coordinated movements with the IDF, the convoy was hit as it was leaving Deir al-Balah warehouse. The victims were British, Australian, Palestinian, and a US-Canadian dual citizen. I fully believe that Israel expects to not be held accountable for the crimes against humanity that they are committing right in front of us. They have been indiscriminately killing innocent civilians proudly and posting their own crimes on social media for the world to see. The more that our city fails to address this issue, the more complicit we are in crimes against humanity. We are coming to the city council and speaking to you, and you still fail to pass a ceasefire resolution and take a strong stance against the genocide of Palestinians. It's been 178 days of indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians in Palestine, and your failure to act on this issue will not age well in history. I don't see Ashland as a city of peace. I see Ashland as a city that is complicit in Israel's genocidal actions, not only in Gaza, but also in the Congo and Sudan as well. Oregon is one of 33 states that have cooperative agreements with Israel. In
Mr.
2022,
Foster.
Oregon exported more than $1.3 billion worth of manufacturing goods to Israel. Thank you.
And I realize that you both have come in since I announced that everyone only has 1 minute because we have such a packed house today. So I don't mean to interrupt, realizing that you probably didn't know the time limit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Powell. I'm an Ashland resident. And I just want to share beautiful experience that we had this weekend. We hosted an event called Kura, which stands for Culture of Unity and Repair in Ashland. And this was a plea for the citizens of Ashland who embody such deep spirituality to unite our spirituality with our social justice, that we can't claim to be proponents of oneness while we have $300,000+ going to support Israel while they are committing a genocide. So I'm asking for a sense of integrity and coherence from our people. I'm so delighted that so many have showed up tonight, especially for the environment, but it's terrible for the environment to massacre 50,000 people and to destroy an entire swath of land and to push and to pollute the environment in that way. So I'm just calling for some integrity from our citizens and from the ones who represent us. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the consent agenda, I just want to make an announcement that we are changing the order of the public hearings and ordinances. So we will be taking up first the resolution regarding telecommunications updates for small wireless facilities, followed then by the ordinance regarding establishing the Human Resources Department, and then the ordinance amending the Fire Prevention Code. So we move on to the consent agenda. Would any counselor wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? Okay, the floor is open for a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Hanson? Nope, sorry, Hyatt.
Yes.
Thank you, and I want to welcome Mark Brouillard to the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, and also Joni Hand to the Ad Hoc Committee on Affordable Childcare and Early Childcare Development. Mr. Brouillard's term will start this month, and Ms. Hand will start in June. But we appreciate them coming forward to serve the community in this way. We are now to the public hearings and ordinances. And as I mentioned, we will start with the second reading of Ordinance 3234, the ordinance and resolution regarding telecommunications updates for small wireless facilities.
Okay, so we have now, got it on, yes, thanks. We have gone ahead and given you your ordinance now again, and it does have the corrections that was made. I think that was okay, sorry.
Yeah. Just tilt it.
Oh, okay. I saw it go off earlier, so I wasn't sure. Okay, sorry. 16.20, I think 080. Oh, wait, excuse me. Oh, shoot. Well, let's see here. I'll get to it here in a, okay, wait, here, I got it. P1, and it would be under, so it would be on 16.12080 B3A. And it states that a copy of the mailing list will be sent to the city and to properties within 300 feet of the proposed facility. So that was the only change to your ordinance from 2 weeks ago, and that has been done. Otherwise, everything is ready for a second reading and a finish.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff before we open up the?
I should also, excuse me, I should also add that Ms. Werner is on Zoom, so she's ready in case you have any questions for her.
Okay. And do we have anyone who has requested to speak by Zoom? I see we have some other folks, or at least one other person on. Okay.
There should be 3, but I only see 1 person.
Okay,
currently.
but I have the forms for them here in my pile. Okay, great. Okay, so we are now moving to testimony regarding this ordinance, and we will give everyone 2 minutes. We have a large number, so again, we'll follow the similar pattern that we did before. In this case, you'll get a single chime at 20 seconds before the 2 minutes are up. And again, please finish your last sentence when you hear the double chime. And we will take them in this order. Ivy Ross, followed by Christy Chipowski, and then Daniel Helgerman, and Meredith Lowry. And please, as with the last ones, please say your name and the city in which you reside, and then start your testimony, but please stay in close to that microphone so we can hear you, and make sure you push the button, and this is the tricky part with all this new technology, push the button so that you have a red light in front of you, and then we will be able to hear you. Thank you.
My name is Ivy Ross. I live in Ashland, Oregon. I'm a founding member of Oregon for Safer Technology. I do thank you for your time and your service. I know it's a lot of work. I think the ask today is to pause. I feel like we need another revision of this ordinance. It does not feel final to me. I have a lot of frustration that I've been working through the last week, people calling and things, and thinking about how we've really made an effort for 6 years to bring you all the science, international science from around the world that's very valid. I was upset to hear that one of our counselors had called this information pseudoscience fairly recently, and that was upsetting. It felt really disrespectful. And we've offered this ordinance from Andrew Campanelli that we raised money for and basically offered to you for free. He's like one of the leading experts in the world on these things. And it was upsetting to hear that you guys had gone to take another chunk of taxpayer money to take someone else's advice that we feel is not as aware and protective in the way they're doing this. This ordinance does not account for provisions regarding fire safety, which we had looked into quite a bit with a fire safety expert. So you're lacking fire safety provisions in this ordinance, which seems relevant. This current draft has no provisions to limit the number of facilities in town to make sure that we don't have a redundant amount of wireless tech. That seems relevant. So I think pausing for another study session would be a smart thing to do. This current draft has no provision for applicants providing evidence of the need for these or public notification beyond 300 feet. 300 feet feels very inadequate to me in a public right-of-way. And I know the fear of upsetting telecom and feds is very real, but I think the real power in the end is in the truth. And I feel like we deserve more time and space to get this right. If other cities and counties and countries, entire countries can have that, then I think Ashland can too.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Chapowski, and I've been a longtime Ashland resident, 22 years. And I know that you can't consider health reasons for this telecom ordinance, but I wanted to humanize this experience. I humanize this issue for you. So my daughter was very sick for 7 years with Lyme disease while growing up. As a result, her body was more compromised and susceptible to EMFs. When I realized that EMFs could be a contributing factor to her poor health, I discovered we had multiple RF digital meters on our apartment building and were less than a mile from 4 cell towers. We were literally living in an EMF soup. Within 1 hour of leaving the house, her debilitating anxiety and ever-constant headache completely disappeared. She rarely left the house because she was so ill. This was a huge missing puzzle piece in the ongoing mystery of her health problems and how to solve them. I then found a home with an analog meter. It was in the woods, so I didn't think to look for cell towers. I moved my daughter in, and from the moment she stepped onto the property, she started feeling off. I mean, as soon as she stepped out of the car, she got a headache. She had a constant headache, restless legs, fatigue, and couldn't digest food. By the next day, she was constantly vomiting and her stomach hurt. She finally said, "Mom, I don't feel good here. Something's not right." I searched and found out about the cell tower that was a half-mile away. Finally, I ended up buying an RF meter and had to test every rental that we were interested in to see if it was livable for my daughter. We found one that tested low on RF, and she has been doing well there for over 4 years, and we have an analog meter as well. That's one of the really unique things about Ashland, is that there are a lot of analog meters here still. Unfortunately, the new cell tower going in at SOU is a half mile from us, and this may mean that we need to move again. I don't believe it's been turned on yet. We haven't felt it. People like my daughter are canaries in the coal mine. Eventually, we will all feel it, as the effects are cumulative. I want to thank you for taking the time to consider the profound implications of your decision today and how it will directly impact the lives and health of every living being who resides within Ashland. That's all of the animals and the insects and the trees. Rather than being like every other town out there and trying to keep up with the times, we have the opportunity to stand out and make Ashland a safer haven from this dangerous and unnatural technology. Please deeply consider, as a leader in this community, what will your legacy be? Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Helgerman, Meredith Lowry, Paul Mozina, and Andre, the man known as Andre Bradford. If you can push that button right in front of you, the silver button.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay, it was on and I turned it off. All right. My name is Daniel Helgerman and I'm a resident of Ashland. 5 years ago when I moved here, I was dumbfounded at how much the city cared for the individuals and the culture of care that was kind of felt across the board. And one of the things that a story that was really touching to me was several times folks kept GMOs out of the valley. There was a big fight to keep them out of the valley. And just like GMOs and Roundup no one believes that having Roundup on food is more healthy than having organic food. Just like no one perceives more radiation to be more healthy than less radiation. And when we cross a threshold to start deploying infrastructure around the city, we don't know what the consequences will be, and that risks need to be taken, progress needs to be made, but I look at this very much as a want and not a need, and I think that everyone's wireless signals are just fine, and I think that we'd all agree for that. So with the abundance of care that Ashland takes when it comes to defending the parks and other public health matters, I wish that this would be considered in that same regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to us all again.
If you can get in a little closer to that
Sure.
mic, thank you.
Yeah, I realize how complex your job is. And I moved here to Ashland in 2001 because of the same things that Dan was just talking about. The food consciousness, it's a cultural oasis. I mean, where do we have this kind of beauty? The vineyards, the food. People come here to relax and enjoy themselves, take in the beauty, and leave the cities that are now being rolled out with all this, the facial recognition, the traffic calming cameras, that whole sense of the RF, this whole sense of being monitored and having somebody watch you, and it's not relaxing. This is a place that I think we should really keep as it is, as much as we can. Of course, progress is going to happen, but we have AFN. We could utilize that to the fullest extent. We could expand it. We wouldn't have any gaps in data or telecom. I took the time to go through the Stamford, Connecticut, and the New Hampshire, both of their presentations, where they went through, had expert testimony. I emailed them to you. I time-stamped them. I don't know that you had time to go through them, but these are the things that we need a study session to look at. These people ask excellent questions, the council members, things that are not in our ordinance that would protect the people, protect the culture in our town, and I think we need to really look at them. So that's my main request, and there's things I could go through about what they talked about, but that's really what I feel is needed, just so we can keep the kind of place we have here without. That's why people come here, to get away and escape, the stresses. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Paul Mozina, the man known as Andre Bradford, Russell Witt, and Odette Wilkins.
Thank you, councilors. My name is Paul Mozina.
Paul, yeah. So anyone else who comes up, you don't need to push it again. As long as none of the rest of us talk, it'll stay on. So you're good.
Perfect. Can you restart the clock?
Yes, please restart the clock,
Please restart
Alyssa.
the clock. At the March 19th first reading of the ordinance, Councilor Dow made some comments that I really found to be inaccurate. I'd like to bring some of them up just to clear the air. He said, "We have been nothing but forthright during this entire process. I have made every effort to communicate in good faith." But the city hired Ms. Warner on November 22nd, and OST, I was there at the meeting on December 7th. We met with Councilor Dow at the Pony Express, and he, for some reason, failed to mention that the city had signed an agreement with Attorney Warner, and he said, "Well, if you get this ordinance from Campanelli, we'll take a look at it. Are you okay with us just taking a look at it? The staff doesn't have time for any back and forth, but we'll take a look at it if you give it to us." And I remember at the time I was like, "What? You're going to take a look at it, and we're not going to have any back and forth?" And I didn't know at the time that Councilor Dahl was well aware that they had already formed an agreement with Nancy Warner. They were working on their own ordinance. They had no intention of paying any attention to what Campanelli was offering. And another thing that Councilor Dale put out that I was really disturbed by, he said, the initial version of the ordinance came out on February 13th, and Campanelli gave us feedback around the end of February, and then the first reading came on the 19th. There were no changes to the ordinance between the 13th and the 19th, not one change. Yet at the 19th meeting on the 19th, he said, I have taken the last couple of weeks ensuring that all 5 of Campanelli's complaints, the issues that he raised, he said, I have taken ensuring that all 5 of them have been addressed. He reviewed it. I put it in the ordinance. Well, he didn't put it in the ordinance. There's still no notification for administrative reviews. There's still no sidewalks are still included in the definition of an easement. You did not include Andrew Campanelli's request or his feedback in his 5. Thank you. I just want to point that out. It was really just disingenuous and misrepresented what had happened. So
thank you.
Greetings. I am indeed the man known as Andre Bradford, and I do make my home here in Ashland. And I'm going to collect my thoughts. I didn't really have anything planned, but I'm definitely here as part of the group of people who are bringing to your attention that there are known and certainly unknown, but there are many known dangers associated with electromagnetic frequencies, EMFs for short, and the proliferation of 5G that we're all talking about here and the smart city agenda. I don't know how many of you have studied the Agenda 21, also known as the 2030, also known as the UN, United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development, but all of this conversation is wrapped up in that. And a lot of us here, and perhaps you too, are basically falling victim to an agenda that you may not be aware of. And I do, again, refer to myself as the man known as, because I am indeed a man. I'm not a person. I don't go by a name. And I want to let you know that free men and free women are not obligated to follow any ordinances proposed by you. So I'm not here to plead with you. I'm just here to speak with you as a man to fellow man or man to fellow women. And on that note, if you authorize and bring in something which the industry has known. See, I had the privilege of working with a PhD physicist, Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, and her husband, Bill Van Bys, in 1974, wrote a treatise about the dangers of the electromagnetic frequency. And he was even just looking at the 800 megahertz range, which is the kind that the cell phones were putting up to your ears. And he was talking about tumors back then in 1974. 20 seconds?
20 seconds.
Anyway, I'm just here to let you know that a free man, if any one of you bring harm to a free man or a free woman, the law of equity is on our side. And there are many of us here who have experience with that. And if you trespassed against us, we have no resort but then to make amends using the law of equity. That's what I leave you with. Thank you very much. And I do know it is a difficult position, but the best thing to do is do nothing. Thanks.
Thank you. We have the next 2 people have signed on to speak to us via Zoom. So we have Russell Witt and Odette.
Mayor, Odette is having tech issues.
Okay, so we will then go on to Rola Masri, who is also online, it looks to be. So, Mr. Witt?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Russell Witt. I'm a professor of medical imaging and optical sciences, a PhD in biomedical engineering at the University of Arizona. And I wanted to just quickly comment on the public safety aspect of the microwave radiation. I've worked with ultrasound and microwaves for over 20 years for defense and medical research. And I can tell you unequivocally that no environmental factor has been more thoroughly studied than the biological effects of microwaves on living systems. So that's the band between 0.3 gigahertz and 300 gigahertz, including 4G and 5G frequencies. And thousands of those studies are within guidelines of what the FCC would be considered safe. And I want to just remind you of the largest studies funded by NIH, the NTP, National Toxicology Program, that recently completed a 20-year study and published in peer review effects of cancer and genotoxicity, which is DNA damage. The largest study that the European Union have ever conducted, the reflux study in 2005, the largest study that Italy has ever conducted, the Ramsini Institute, all had the same kinds of conclusions. And I think you can just work from publications before 1975 in government studies to reach the conclusions that we just have to be knowledgeable of these things and use our devices. Obviously, I use technology every day, but it's really important that councils and community come together in town hall sorts of forums to have much more open discussion and debate with experts in the field. An expert means you have to be familiar with the peer-reviewed government studies and be willing to discuss and debate those. You can call yourself an engineer, you can call yourself a physician, but it's absolutely vital that you include those studies in your conversation. And I'm happy to help facilitate any interaction or town hall such as that. We have great scientists, engineers, and physicians that are well knowledgeable that would love to participate and help the community give answers. My final comment would just be Andrew Campanelli has helped a lot of different places here in Arizona and continues to help stop cell towers. He used to work for a telecom industry, and I would be open arms to listen very carefully to all the protective strategies he has to make sure that you can have the technology, but you're protecting children and adults in your community. So I will just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on now to Rola Masri, who is also on via Zoom. And we'll follow, Odette is not yet back on. It looks like there's still technology issues there. So we'll go on to Shady Rose, Sonia Novick, and Larry Graves after Rola Masri.
Hi, my name is Rola Masri, and I am the Director of Government Outreach for the Environmental Health Trust, a nonprofit scientific think tank. On August 13, 2021, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled in our case against the Federal Communications Commission, Environmental Health Trust et al. Versus the FCC. The court found that the FCC's order to maintain its current safety guidelines was arbitrary and capricious in its complete failure to respond to comments concerning environmental harm caused by radio frequency radiation. The court also found that the FCC had failed to take into account scientific findings relevant to the impact of radio frequency radiation on children, long-term impact on public health, and the ubiquity of wireless devices and other major technology changes since 1996 guidelines in use today were first promulgated. The court remanded further action to the FCC. To this date, the FCC has not complied with the court order. A question for the Ashland City Council. The Federal Communication Commission sets human exposure standards for radio frequency radiation emitted from wireless facilities and devices. Does the City of Ashland have proof that the cell towers installed in the past and being installed now are meeting current FCC human radio frequency exposure requirements? Are the telecommunications service providers and the wireless facilities that would be installed under this zoning ordinance insured or even insurable if any of the Ashland residents were to get sick from long-term exposure to a wireless facility close to their home? If the answer is no to either of these questions, Ashland should table this ordinance until these two measures are taken to ensure the safety and well-being of its residents. Currently, insurance authorities classify 5G and wireless radiation as high risk. Carriers define radio frequency as a pollutant, and their insurers exclude it from health effects liability coverage. A review paper on corporate risk entitled Limiting Liability with Positioning to Minimize Negative Health Effects of Cellular Phone Towers, the authors recommend restricting antennas near homes and within 500 meters of schools and hospitals to protect companies from future liability. Instead, Ashland should focus on providing safer wired technology all the way to the end user and not on wireless infrastructure, which will not meet future connectivity needs.
Thank you. We will now move to Shady Rose, Sonia Novick, Larry Graves, and Derek Franklin.
Hi, my name is Shady Rose, and I live just outside the city limits of Ashland. I've lived in Ashland and this area since 1996. I have a couple points I'd like to make. The fourth and most important branch of government is the people. This fourth branch has been practically left out of education, and consequently, the people have been remiss in our duties. We have been tracking closely, we should be tracking closely what our public servants are doing. Many of us have issued a notice and demand to cease and desist the deployment of the 5G. And this is our right, and even though we have been remiss in our duties, we, the people, we should be tracking our public servants and what you're doing. So the public rightfully and needfully reclaim our right and power to make sure that our public servants have our interests at stake, not the interests of some other stakeholder corporation that has only its bottom line in mind. If our public servants do not listen to the people, then it's the people's job to hold them accountable. The issue at hand is there's tremendous amount of proof of the dangers of health even exists for existing cell phone towers and cell phones. 5G is something quite different. It's not only about telecommunications technology, like its proponents would have us believe. It has the capacity to be weaponized technology and is part of a much bigger agenda. Lieutenant Colonel Newell of the military said, "Our intent is to embrace 5G-enabled tech as a weapon in the defense market." So this is something that we need to actually take very seriously. And you have a public oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter. So help me God. So we want you to listen to the people and not follow this consensus process that already has a predetermined outcome with no intent of ever listening to the public.
Thank you. Ma'am, before you start, I just want to remind the audience that we have a policy of no signs inside the chambers, so please do not raise your signs.
Sonia Novik, recent resident of Ashland, Oregon. Greetings and good evening, Mayor. Oh, you can't hear me? Okay. My name is Sonia Novik, and I'm a recent resident of Ashland. Greetings and good evening, Mayor, all City Council, attorneys representing the City of Ashland. I am known, oh, I already told you my name. A notice and demand to cease and desist on the 5G deployment was transmitted and received electronically via email. This communication would have initially been received on March 28, 2024, and again over the last several days. All subsequent transmittal deliveries were to the Ashland City Council and your agency and agents. Here I have prepared and submitted and present printed copies to all parties of the same. My presence and action is due to the willful, flagrant violations the City of Ashland public officers of not informing the public of the true nature and legal requirements of the public input laws of the state of Oregon that cannot be superseded via the attempted implementation of a dispute resolution based consensus process reliant upon predetermined outcome. Your actions to date create a perception within the public that you are employing processes that, when considered in whole, constitute a broad-based scheme of artifice. This consensus-based process agenda that by definition encompasses a predetermined outcome was not disclosed to the public or the residents of the City of Ashland. The act of using the consensus process allows for consistent violations of the statutory laws of the state of Oregon. Therefore, no consent is given by the body politic, constituents, public, or residents of the City of Ashland. The consensus business public input process involvement of third-party beneficiaries or stakeholders and documented as consent to proceed is hereby rejected. The falsified historic record of stakeholder meetings constitutes the public comment are also rejected. Not true public consent has been given nor sought. I sincerely hope that upon this consideration of this information and of your actual obligation of duty, that the matter will be tabled until such time that your consideration of input of these actual public is paramount in the decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Graves, Derek Franklin, Vicki Simpson, and Alan Rassam.
Good evening, councilors. Larry Graves, longtime Ashland resident. I have several questions for you, and I realize it's not a give and take here, but I'd like you to consider these questions and perhaps get back to them during your period of time tonight to respond. What's the rush? What is the big rush? I understand that our current ordinance is inadequate, but I do not understand why this is being pushed through at this time without adequate review and back and forth with the people in a workshop environment. I'd like to know if you feel that you are in explicit compliance with Oregon Revised Statute 192.620 through 705, state policy on public input for decision-making on changing municipal codes, ordinances, and statutes. I would also like to know, since we can see sunlight, and we know that there is a lot of radiation that does come from sunlight, we can protect ourselves from that. We can take steps to wear hats and put sunscreen on our skin and protect ourselves from the ultraviolet radiation. We can't see 3G, 4G, 5G radio magnetic interference and radio frequency radiation. We can't see it and we can't feel it, but we know it's there. Kind of like Home Depot employees. We know they're there. We have faith that they're there. We never see them, but we know that they exist. So I would like to leave you with that thought, with those questions, and think about the fact that we need to have a consensus among all the people here that we feel like we've had our chance to put in our input. I mean, the public input process, I counted 17 pro 5G comments and 61 anti-5G comments. So why are we marching forward with this in the face of such written opposition? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Derek. I'm a resident of Ashland. So as you can see, the tone has changed. We're no longer asking you to do the right thing. We're pretty much at this point demanding it. I'm sorry, but we are now engaged to the point where if this continues going forward, it's going to get a lot worse. I mean, I do have to thank you, because if you hadn't done the way you did last, I wouldn't have been part of this, and now I am, and I'm learning so much. Oh my God, my brain hurts. So it's very cool, but yes, the tone is definitely changing, and we're just asking you to shelve this entire thing. Campanelli's thing, at first I was like, yay, but then it's like, it's giving allowance for 5G. And don't get me wrong, I love technology. I will have my spaceship, but 5G is not anything that's gonna help us get there. It's just bad. So that's all I'm here to say, is that you guys basically represent us. Unfortunately, the way that a public servant works, we pretty much dictate to you how we feel, and you're supposed to respond to that and take it seriously. The fact that you're not, and you're relying on someone that apparently did not do a deep dive, I mean, dude, bro, in the first half hour, I ran across the 10K statements from the telecommunication companies, and they're admitting that EMFs are pollutants. Are you serious? So that's all I gotta say. We need you to take your job seriously, because if you don't, we are going to step in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Vicki Simpson, Alan Rassam, and then we have Odette Wilkins, who is online. She'll be in number 3. And then Rivers Brown.
Hello, I'm Vicki Simpson.
Ms. Simpson, can you get in close to that microphone so we
Yes.
can hear you? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Vicki Simpson, and I live in Ashland. 5G small cell antennas in Ashland will be different from anything we have seen in the last 20 years. It will be an increase of from 3 to 300 times the radiation and closer to us than we've ever encountered. Each small cell is made up of dozens of antennas and hundreds of channels. And no effort has been made by our ordinances to minimize the number of 5G facilities in our city. If the council finds it daunting to deal with these powerful wireless companies, I can understand the pressure you must feel. But I rather think that it would be much worse to face a constituency experiencing famine. I'm not being facetious, famine, because pollinators and other insects are apt to be the first instant victims of 5G. Physicist Paul Ben-Ishai and colleagues from Israel have produced models indicating that 5G millimeter waves are sized to disable and kill insects. Since 1 out of every 4 of our bites of food is insect-pollinated food, how will we cope? People living near 5G facilities in other cities are already reporting that besides their own physical symptoms from 5G, they have had to go out every day with a paintbrush to pollinate plants in their garden because the insects are gone, as are the birds, the deer, and the bear. The animals that stick around are rats and ground squirrels who live underground and eat the food. Please collaborate with us. We are your neighbors. We need our health, our gardens, and our food growers, and we can tell you what we've learned about other communities and how they have tried to protect themselves legally within their ordinances. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor Graham, council members, city staff, and fellow citizens, I'm Alan Rathslam, a resident of Ashland. I'm presenting reasons for a council study session to review this ordinance and increase city authority to regulate small cell wireless facilities. The city invited comments from the public, but has not disclosed which have been considered, included, or rejected for this ordinance. There has been no comprehensive public dialogue or collaboration. The ordinance content is too important to be decided by one attorney and one council liaison. Here are just a few facts with significant implications. The ordinance does not specify evaluation criteria and substantial evidence to be considered by city permit decisions. We are told courts want to see this in the ordinance. That's the legal document. 5G is a marketing term that covers low, mid, and high band frequencies. Ashland does not yet have high band 5G frequencies, which start at 24 gigahertz. Effects experienced elsewhere are alarming. FCC public radiation exposure regulations are not safety standards. With no biological studies, they assume exposure is safe if it does not heat your skin. Insurance companies understand the science and won't issue liability coverage for health claims from radiation exposure. Administrative review in the ordinance allows the Public Works Director to approve small cell facilities with sole discretion and no notice to the public. It's not clear if the public will know about franchise agreements with telecom carriers. Trees and landscaping near 5G small cells may die from radiation exposure. We're a tree city. Who pays for the damages on private property? A council study session will allow experts to correct deficiencies in this ordinance. May it not be true that in Ashland, that policies despise science and embraces experts from profit-motivated sources. Finally, I would like to express my personal frustration for the many times I have offered my PowerPoint presentation to you, which provides those government documents that show the harm that this technology causes. And not
Thank you,
one
Mr.
council
Asman.
member has accepted that invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Odette Wilkins, who will be joining us via Zoom. Then we have Rivers Brown. Nope, it's still not working? Okay. We will keep at it. Please let me know, Alyssa, if they come on. Rivers Brown, Karen Molesky, Tanya Simmons, and Scott Ploss.
I don't know why I brought these up here. I'm going to chunk them once again and be a loose cannon for y'all.
Could you do it a little closer to the microphone?
Okay. And yeah, insurance. Get some insurance if you're going to pass this ordinance. Please get deep, big insurance because we're going to need it. You know, I first wrote to y'all a few days after I read it. I read the ordinance and I transcribed it into a word processor, and I said, "Oh, these guys are doing an end run." Y'all know what an end run is, right? You take, quarterback, if he's good enough, can pull back. Anyway, go all the way around the edge instead of in the middle where all the energy is and the action is. So, yeah, if this ordinance is passed, as it is, it will be a total carte blanche, a blank paper for anybody who wants to install these wireless devices anywhere they want to in Ashland and everywhere, as many as they want. I suggest it be a sine qua non, which means without which not. And that means to include Campanelli's amendments. Include this into it. It won't hurt. It can only help. We need a sine qua non, without which not. Without which not, y'all's ordinance as it stands is a carte blanche. And it's a disaster. I don't see how you don't see it. I mean, I'm just a regular old guy. I'm just feeding off of what everybody says, But I've researched it a bit too. Look, I got 2 devices on me right now I could pull out and turn on and freak everybody out, Probably with all the EMS running around this room. But I thank y'all for let's pause this thing and let's do some work together on it and have something Ashland can really have without having to swallow it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Molesky, would you mind, we have Odette Wilkins, looks like the technology is working for the moment. Could we move her ahead of time? Sure. Okay, great. So Odette Wilkins, if you can come on in to see us. Are they gone? Oh, it's under attendees, Alyssa. Is there a way to move Odette across from an attendee to a panelist? Just, if you click on it. And then allow to talk. There you go. Great. All right, so Odette, please, you have 2 minutes, and we'll give you a chime when you have 20 seconds left. Alyssa, can you please turn on your microphone so that she can hear your chime? Thank you. Ms. Wilkins?
Okay, thank you very much. And let me first see if I can get my, I guess my picture isn't showing for some reason.
Your video's not showing, but we can see your picture.
Okay, fine. I apologize. All right, I'm happy to be addressing you again. I am President and General Counsel of Wired Broadband, Inc., a nonprofit, and I'm also chair of the National Call for Safe Technology, a coalition of over 100 organizations and individuals nationwide. The draft ordinance does not provide sufficient guidance on what evidence is required by applicants to provide the city, showing where a tower should be placed, evidence of a gap in service, least intrusive means to fill that gap, and evidence of any capacity needed for future demands. Otherwise, the applicant can claim is proprietary information. Why would you want to give access to applicants to use your public rights of way if they refuse to give you the information you need to make an informed decision for your residents? Under the Telecommunications Act of 1996, there must be substantial evidence in the record to justify a denial of an application in order to withstand a telecom challenge. Otherwise, it's deemed approved. The current code and proposed draft do not require applicants to provide evidence. That means you lose. Why would you want to give that up? Congress preserved your right to ask and get that substantial evidence. Why would you want to throw that away? There's no provision for public notice or hearing before administrative review of wireless in public rights of way. What happens when it shows up on someone's property? That's a taking without compensation and unconstitutional. The draft ordinance does not include fire safety provisions. Cell towers are electrical installations with fire risks, and people and children need to escape and try to outrun a fire caused by the towers. Firefighters have to wait up to an hour for the power to be cut or get electrocuted. This is something that you can easily deal with. If you are interested in climate change, then you'd be interested to know that 5G is an energy hog, a battery vampire. These are not my words. This is actually industry, from industry articles. Expected to increase consumption 61 times between 2020 and 2023.
Thank you.
The draft ordinance is not yet by for a vote, and these huge gaps must be first addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karen Molesky,
Yes,
followed by Tanya Simmons and Scott Ploss.
Okay.
Just,
I am Karen Molesky, as a resident here in Ashland for 5.5 years. Having relocated to be closer to family, I want to thank you all for your caring hard work. I'm sure you never imagined the enormity of the tasks when you took the job on. Did you ever think that you were going to need to look at the science of electricity or electromagnetic radiation? I previously took it on as right out of art school, as a young potter, I needed to cultivate financial responsibility. And darn those microwaves, they do denature proteins, wreaking havoc on our digestion and our brain cells. In the past, I have written to a few of you to express that gratitude for your caring hard work. But I find it odd now that the council would willingly ignore clear and present dangers to the community with regard to an ordinance that could easily be better protective. This current ordinance appears weak and leaves us susceptible to dangerous implementation. I hope you will reconsider that there is need to further study to achieve the best for this important issue. Is it fear that has been driving this decision to approve a cookie-cutter ordinance? And that is not so hard to understand. We live in a culture that is dominated by fear. It takes enormous courage not to fall prey to it. But if other communities are able to successfully adopt ordinances that both protect the citizenry and comply with federal regulations, and citizens here have provided at no small cost that way to do that, surely this is within your scope and incumbent on you to seriously engage with the way to do that. I hope you will reconsider the need to further study to include Mr. Campanelli's experienced and accomplished worded ordinance to achieve the best for the city, the citizens, and frankly, the council itself. We need learned criteria and safety, considering our substantial risk for disaster. With all respect, thank you so much.
Thank you. Tanya Simmons, Scott Ploss, Pamela Joy, and Nancy Ashmead.
Hello, my name is Tanya Simmons, and
if you could get it a little closer, please.
Okay. The first industry-funded study on the safety of cell phones was headed by Dr. George Carlo quite a long time ago, and his job was to prove once and for all that cell phones were safe, but unfortunately his findings did not align with what they wanted to hear. So after 7 years of research, he concluded that cell phones were detrimental to human health, and Dr. Carlo was immediately removed from the program, and the public spin machine was put into action to smooth out any damage that his announcements might have made, and so it began ever since then. So why are we told that these technologies are safe? And I think it would be correct in saying that it's about money. The telecoms industry is now one of the most powerful industries on our planet. It is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and it stands to make many more billions more with the 5G deployment. So maybe they're paying a lot of cities a lot of money to install this technology, which is only based on their marketing and their industry-funded research. The industry stands to lose an awful lot if the truth ever did come out, and it is coming out. It is really coming out now, all over the world, despite attempts not to. Several countries in Europe have banned 5G already, and several states here in the US are already following suit. I think Meredith mentioned about New Hampshire, and I've just recently heard about that. So why do we really need this? why? I really want to know what the rush is. Why do we need it? And we all need to communicate, but at what cost to our lives and to humanity in general? So we together must take time now to halt this and really discuss it and make an ordinance that's really great for all of us and protect this incredible city. It really is an amazing place. We could be a real forerunner here. Thank you. Great respect to all of you for a very difficult job.
Thank you.
You want me to start now, or you want me to wait?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Scott Ploss. I'm an electrical contractor. I'm also a resident in Ashland. I got into the field. I've got into the field because I was pretty much sitting where you folks are now, which is doubters. I thought the people behind me who had issues were basically they were a little bit off. Okay. And I got into the field because I wanted to prove one of my friends wrong. I have the devices that can measure the fields. I have the devices so I can read what's going on. I went in to prove one of my friends wrong. And then she was able to tell me where the wires were and how much pain it caused to her body by running her hands over the walls. And it was a complete wake-up call. It shattered my belief in what I was taught for 20 years as an electrical contractor and all of my training. I was able to verify the fields with something called a tri-field meter, which other people have brought up there. And it completely changed how I view things and how I do business. What I'm asking is there's a lot of information out there that's mostly put out by telecom industries supporting it, that if you look at the guidelines that say it's safe, look who's funding the studies. There are somewhere around 11,000 peer-reviewed studies that say the stuff is not safe. And this has been going on, the studies have been going on since the turn of the 1900s. The United States Navy did a translation of a Russian study for 50 years back in the 70s. So the United States government has known there's issues with this and health issues with this since the 70s. It was specifically excluded in the Telecom Industry Act in 1996. Who paid for what? We can't say that. But again, there's no reason to rush into this for an untested with no long-term safety test on this project. We have the time. Andrew Campanelli has done many, many different writings for many different cities. Let's take it out. There's people who have paid over $8,000 to get him to write this for you folks. And thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Joy, Nancy Ashmead, Cynthia Z, and Francesca Robinson.
Hi, y'all. I'm Pamela Joy, Ashland resident of over 30 years, and I live on Walker Avenue. I am the director and founder of 2 nonprofits that serve Ashland, have served Ashland for almost the whole of that 30 years. And I have to say I'm disgruntled and unhappy because now I have to leave my home of 30 years because the cell tower is 30 yards from my house. And I cannot sleep there. I am really, I get very affected because I'm electrosensitive, and I'm very unhappy because my impression is that we're not listened to. We come here, and many of us talk to you about our concerns and our fears and our sensitivities and our wishes to have safety in this arena, and I don't understand your choices. And of the people that come here, I know there are many more that don't come here and speak, but that are concerned, affected, sensitive. So I am requiring you as leaders of our community to act with integrity and honor and honesty and listen to us who are some of your residents here. Many of us doing really good work for the community who want this to be heard, that we want a cease on the rollout of the 5G because there's not been sufficient public input as I agree with so much that everybody else has said. about the fire danger. If we're a tree city, we're endangering all these trees with putting all the cell towers and the 5G near them. They dry them out, and then they can die or burst into flames. So thank you. 2 minutes
you.
is short.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Ashmead, and I'm one of the people that pitched some money in to pay for Campanelli's work on this ordinance that it seems like hasn't actually been read. I'd love to see some hands up from you guys as to who actually read it, and I guess you guys don't have to answer us today. So, wow, there's this blank wall in front of us. But this has been a long evening. There's been a lot of very valid things that have been said. And I hope that they've gone into your heart and not just your mind, because we all love this place and we want to see it thrive. And this ordinance that you come up with is not going to support the highest and best. And I just want to call for your highest and best here as our representatives. We're here to work with you. We've been coming to speak, and we're not feeling it coming back. So it would be even better if we could just put a moratorium on any further high resolution fixtures in our city. We have some alternatives to that. This isn't the only thing that we have to do. I've heard somebody said, maybe it was you, Mayor, that your hands are tied. We are here to untie your hands and stand behind you and give you courage to do something different. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Z., Francesca Robinson, Bob Jackson Minor, and Teresa DeMarie.
I just want to second what Pamela Joy said and what Nancy Ashmead said. All of us have been coming for several years. I devoted at least 2 or 3 years part-time, I would say a part-time job, doing notice of liability, learning everything I can, trying to get all of you to listen to us. I've come to speak several times. These are amazing people. They put in tons of work. We are asking you to listen to us. This is urgent. Now, I have a cell tower 1 block away from my house against my will. Luckily, I wasn't here when they erected it. I went to visit my dad, who has memory issues now. I was invited to go on a cruise with my family. I didn't go because they have 5G on that cruise, and I'm not going to be on a cruise with 5G. Every time my dad's gone on a cruise with 5G, he has a pacemaker. He's had a bunch of the stupid shots and the boosters. He's so ill now. He can't even remember anything for more than 10 minutes. This is very dangerous. There are lots of people dying. There's a bunch of material in the shots that's activated by the 5G, and I'm asking you guys to please pay attention to these brilliant people who come to you every day. Thank you all the time, and we're not being listened to.
Thank you.
I'm Francesca Robinson. I currently live in Talent, but I lived in Ashland for many years before that. I'm curious if you all wonder why we are so passionate about this. It's a beautiful evening out. I could have stayed home in my backyard and planted things. But we have come time and time again because we love Ashland. We love the area. I was out kayaking on Immigrant Lake today. I was up on Mount A on Easter Sunday. My husband and I love it here. We can't imagine living anyplace else. And my best guess is that you all love it here, because not only do you choose to live here, but you're choosing to put your heart and soul and time and energy into being a council member. So I think we have that common ground, that we all love this area. And we are so passionate about this issue because we truly believe it will do harm. We are not just like conspiracy theorists without doing research. Many of us have spent hours and hours reading studies, peer-reviewed studies, not just put out by one agency, and time again, coming in from all over the world, there is harm being done. So I echo what many of my friends said. please slow down a little bit. Look at Andrew Campanelli's ordinance, see if you can integrate some of his comments. Where I live on Arnos Road in Talent, the fire barely missed our house. So I know firsthand what it was like to live through the Alameda fire. It didn't affect much of Ashland, and I don't want a fire to affect Ashland. So we need to slow this down and remember we love this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Jackson Minor, Teresa DeMarie, and Gwendolyn Tina.
I'm Bob. I live in Jackson County, out near Phoenix. And believe it or not, I'm actually here as your friend. What I want to say to you is, and of you, recalcitrant counselors few, who knows what may come to pass? But when I, at the age of 2, behaved with equivalent crass, my grandfather bended me over his knee and busted my arrogant attitude. Have we seen arrogant attitude here? Well, I myself have dealt with my own arrogance often enough to realize when I'm seeing it in others. And for somebody to declare that the science, the peer-reviewed science that has been brought to this council by folks here present be entirely ignored and referred to as pseudoscience? Are we dealing with a level of willful ignorance? Or are we here to deal with the truth? I implore you to be part of this community in an active way that integrates the intentions and the work of your fellow Ashlanders. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you.
I'm Teresa DeMarie, and I live in Ashland. I spoke to this council several months ago about the fact that I left Southern California as a refugee from smart meters who were poisoning me and literally killing me. And now I come here terrified that I live in a house that's got an electric pole where there can possibly be a 5G tower, an antenna. And I'm terrified that I'm going to go through the same thing again, and I'm going to get sick, and I'm going to feel trapped. And I would feel powerless and hopeless. So to me, I don't know how to be more human. I don't know how to do more to appeal to your hearts, to understand what it's like for those of us who are sensitive and what kind of pure hell we've been through just to get through life, just to survive. And so sometimes I feel like maybe the only way to get through to you is to use an alternative. And to me, I'm going to prayer right now. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, and now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and
storms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're asking you folks to wake up and see.
And have the grace to change.
Gwendolyn Tina.
Hello. It's Gwendolyn Tara.
Oh, Tara.
Oh, is the mic not on?
Push that little silver button. Thank you.
It's red. Hi. There's a lot of feelings here from a lot of people, and there is a lot of science here. As someone who's been tracking this since my daughter was 2, and she turns 21 this month, and we moved here when she was 1.5 to this land. I'm kind of new to what's happening right now. I had other plans tonight. I'm not new to the story and that they were working with Andrew Campanelli's. I'm new that this ordinance showed up and you're going to vote on it and pass it tonight. And I was like, where's the voices? Where's the conversation? Where's the listening to the community here? There's a lot around this subject. It's really important. There's a lot of voices to be heard. And I feel like that's what's happening. We're all here saying, please pause, please listen, please respect the complicatedness of this and all the people it's going to impact. And I have to tell you, I'm biased. My daughter goes to SOU. There's an application to put it on the science building. She's going to be right there. There's already one near the stadium, but I'm like, she's already on her screen. I don't want her to get blasted all the time on campus. Plus, every student is going to get blasted. Every place we post these, and there's so much research, I've seen it. I've seen where the trees and the grass are damaged by towers. So I'm like, why are we pushing it? Why is this happening so fast? How did I just barely catch up this was happening? And it's only happened in the last few weeks. And everyone's asking you to just take a moment and not push this through and let the voices be heard. So I'm here saying that. I do understand it's a lot of work to navigate. And I respect you for being here and thank you for listening.
Thank you. So, counselors, we are back to the ability to ask questions of staff. We also have Nancy Werner on via Zoom if we have questions for her. Are there any questions of staff? Councilor
Thank you,
Duquesne.
Mayor. I do. I have one question of staff. Looking back at the minutes in our past meeting, I did ask how much we had paid Mrs. Warner and her team, and we didn't get an answer to that question. And looking at the minutes, I see the question was asked, but it wasn't brought back to council or our community.
I believe you should have received an email from the finance director. I'll have to find it.
I did receive an email. However, when we were here at council, I asked if it could be brought back to the meeting. At our previous meeting, I asked if it could be brought to council and to our community's attention.
Well, I did not bring an exact figure I have, and I'm not going to give you off the top of my head type of numbers, but we did send, you asked, and we sent you some numbers, amounts. But I did not bring it here, no.
I did receive that. Is there any way that it could be brought to the community's attention and to council's attention? Can it be on our website? Can
So
it be?
as of right now, it's 11,000, but we haven't received the final bill from Ms. Werner.
Right now, 11,000 is not the final number.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Werner is right here, so I mean.
But
I mean,
I'm
there's not a final,
coming
yeah.
to staff because the money comes from us. And I'm sure Mrs. Warner will give us her final numbers when this is completed. 11,000. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? I have a question. Some folks have brought up this evening that Mr. Campanelli had put forward, I believe, 5 issues with the draft ordinance. And I'm wondering if we might talk through, just briefly, how we have, where we see the ordinance that's on the table reflecting the questions that he brought forward after reviewing them. Is that something that, I know it's off the cuff and you haven't been given time to prepare, but is that something that either any of the counselors who've been involved could answer, or our legal counsel?
On the last ordinance that I presented to you, there was, I could go through that and tell you all the different parts of Campanelli's ordinance, and that was, deemed not sufficient and it didn't work well.
Yes.
So I can tell you that, but I would have to ask Ms. Werner if she knows precisely where Mr. Campanelli's materials were. I don't.
It's my understanding that Mr. Campanelli responded to our draft ordinance. Is that correct? And sent in a list of 5 issues?
Mayor,
Is that correct?
I have
Yes.
them right here if you'd like to go through
Yes,
them.
if you would take us through those, Councilor
You
Dale.
bet, absolutely. All right, so the number one, and this email was received, and I'm reading directly off of an email without edits from someone that sent this, that is here tonight. Number one, the draft ordinance does not provide fact-finding guidance to authorize city decision makers to apprise them of what factual determinations under federal law under federal law, if any of the city decision makers, including planning staff, public works director, and city manager, may make any decision to deny an application or request for an approval. Installation requires that their decision be in writing, and such decision must be based on substantial evidence. And so I believe that question was asked last 2 weeks ago regarding substantial evidence versus probative evidence. So Ms. Werner, if you'd like to go over that again, I'd appreciate that.
And good evening, Mayor, and the rest of the council. So we did talk about this 2 weeks ago, that the statement is correct that under federal law, if the city is going to deny an application for a wireless facility, the denial needs to be in writing and based on substantial evidence in the record. So what we talked about last meeting was this question about whether the application itself should say that the applicant needs to provide probative evidence, which I think is meant to be comparable to substantial evidence in the application. And as I explained 2 weeks ago, the concern I have with that is that at some point, if there's not sufficient information in the application once the city staff has had a chance to review it, if your requirements say your application to be complete needs to contain substantial evidence to support your request. You accepted it as the city, you deemed it final, and then after you actually do a substantive review, you say, oh wait, this doesn't actually have all the evidence we need, so we're going to deny this. It does not establish that it meets certain design criteria, for example. I'm concerned that if your application says that this has to be substantial evidence in the application itself, by accepting it and deeming it final, you may have conceded that there was substantial evidence in that application. So in other words, substantial evidence is the criteria, but we don't want to have the applicant control the idea of the question or the answer of whether what they submitted is substantial evidence. That is the city's determination to make. And so the criteria in the ordinance and in the design standards are designed to be those are what the applicant needs to show. And if they can't show that their small cell would meet the height limitations or the design standards, it can be denied by the city, and there will be substantial evidence because the application will show that gap. The application will show, oh yeah, it does not, it says 50 feet, the cap is 40 feet. That is sufficient substantial evidence to support the denial.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Number two, the ordinance has no provision for public notification or a public hearing prior to an administrative view for wireless facility permits in the public right-of-way. This becomes problematic when a permit application is approved and a wireless facility appears unexpectedly on property with no prior opportunity for the owner to raise objections or describe adverse effects on the property. Could you please go into that, Ms. Werner?
Yes, it is correct that there is not in the ordinance a provision for public notice or neighborhood notice for administrative review. There is for discretionary review. The reason for that, we talked about this at the last meeting as well. Number one, there are shot clocks, so there are limits on the amount of time that the city has to make a decision on these applications, and it can be difficult to get the notice in on time. But also, the administrative review process is designed to be a simplified, streamlined process for those deployments that should be in areas where a small cell is not going to be right next to someone's home or in a residential historic type neighborhood. In those cases, there are specific design criteria set out in the ordinance and in the design resolution that make it so that there will be some protection for those property owners. And in that case, it wouldn't be an administrative review, it would be discretionary review, and there would be notice to the surrounding properties. So again, the administrative review doesn't have that notice requirement because it's supposed to reflect those deployments that are very unlikely to be in areas where it's sensitive. I realize to many of the people there, every place is sensitive. I do understand that. But as we discussed 2 weeks ago, the federal law, not what the city is doing here, but the federal law has said that the city cannot put a moratorium on these deployments. And the city is, if you are going to deny all small cell deployments in the city, there will be a lawsuit if the wireless companies choose to sue. So that was the line we were trying to draw and the balance we're trying to make.
And if I may too, the discretionary review is something that the council was concerned about as to whether or not the city would be notified as to whether or not there was an actual meeting and that meeting was substantive, as opposed to just a fake or faux, just go through the rote meeting and just have a talk. So we've provided a process to make sure that the city has notice so that a city official can be at one of those meetings if there's a discretionary review.
Councilor Dale?
That was it.
Just
Thank
keep
you.
going.
Yep. Okay. Sure. Number 3, the inclusion of sidewalks and utility easements in the public right-of-way definition is an issue because these features are found on or near most homes and dwellings. It's obvious that a wireless facility installation near a sidewalk is often near a home. Utility easements, traditionally for electric, sewer, or water lines, present a more serious situation when a site developer also claims to be a public utility with authority to place a small wireless facility on a lawn or close to a home without an owner's permission. I believe we discussed utility easements 2 weeks ago, but if you wouldn't mind reminding us.
Sure, no problem. Yes, so the idea was that we want to include, if not really include the sidewalks, include the public utility easement because there is some authority already to deploy in the public rights-of-way, in the public utility easement. And if we don't include that in the regulations of this ordinance, then the criteria that we're establishing, the design criteria, the limits on height, the limits on placement, wouldn't apply in the public utility easement. So it would potentially be an area where deployments could happen and there's no applicable regulations for the city to say, wait, no, you've got to go through our process. The process wouldn't clearly apply in those areas. So it's not about allowing these facilities to be in the public utility easement. It is that they can be in the public utility easement. So we need to include that in the ordinance so the same restrictions and regulations will apply.
Okay, thank you. Number 4 was, I think, just a comment relative to the preamble where it states, whereas statements in the draft ordinance are worded well to express the intent of the ordinance. An especially important additional statement needed to address the rollout of numerous small cell and 5G wireless facilities would be the, quote, intent of the city to limit the number of these facilities by requiring strategic wireless facility placement and preventing redundant infrastructure, end quote. Do you have any comments relative to that and why it wasn't included?
Yes. Well, first of all, just in the preamble isn't really the operational part or the enforceable part of the ordinance, so it wouldn't it wouldn't really be something that would help the city with enforcement process, the enforcement process. But just in terms of preventing redundant deployments, the way the federal law works is sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Each provider has the opportunity to deploy the facilities they need to deploy. And so you can't look at it as, well, there's already a small cell antenna there, so we don't want another one close by. I totally understand the reason for not wanting that, but unfortunately the way that federal law is written and has been interpreted, each provider gets the opportunity to install what they think they need to install. With limitations, and we talked about those a couple weeks ago, but you can't have a blanket statement that says, once we say there's a certain number of antennas, all deployments have to stop. That the federal law isn't written in a way that gives the city that authority, because if a provider needs to deploy, they're going to deploy. And sorry to just briefly go into the weeds, because it did come up earlier, is this issue of the significant gap in least intrusive means test. I just want to be clear, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, that is a test that was developed for wireless macro towers, large towers on private property. The FCC specifically said that test does not apply to small cells in the rights of way. That kind of also goes back to the substantial evidence question. There are different tests now that apply for towers versus small wireless facilities. At least still in the Ninth Circuit, that's the case. So there isn't, under the FCC's interpretation of the federal law, that the Ninth Circuit, where Oregon is upheld, you can't really look at it and say, we only want a certain number of antennas, and you've got to prove the need for more. It's just not the way the law is written, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Sorry for that rambling answer, but I just wanted to make sure. I know some people are interested in the significant gap issue, and it just doesn't apply anymore for small cells.
And the final one is the city's draft ordinance does not yet include provisions for Ashland fire safety, which I thought we had significant language in there relative to fire safety, but please speak to it. Legal ordinance text has been offered to Ashland by Susan Foster, at a McCullough law firm, Lyons, Colorado. The text as ours is taken from what Carmel by the Sea has used and what they approved in their ordinance, very similar to that, and specifies professional engineering certifications to assure small wireless facilities for fire safety. Cities have no legal restrictions on the extent of ordinance provisions to minimize fire risks from small wireless facilities, especially in a high-risk environment for fire. So can you speak to what we put in our ordinance relative to fire and wildfire and how that protects Ashland?
Yes. There's a provision that allows, first of all, the application has to show that this deployment is going to be safe. That's, just the basic minimum requirement.
No, excuse me, hold on just a moment. There will be no outbursts in this chamber while we're listening to our counsel. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Werner.
Okay, thank you. So the application needs to show that it's going to be safe. The fire chief has the authority to hire consultants to review applications to verify the safety, confirm the safety at the applicant's cost. And then there's also provisions in there that require the deployment, once it's deployed, that is continually maintained in a safe manner. So if there's any concern about it falling out of compliance with the fire safety criteria that were identified and imposed initially, there's language in the ordinance to make sure that is resolved. And then we also have in the design standards the power shutoff requirements, so that if there is an issue, power would be able to be shut off at each site quickly to be able to contain the issue and have firefighters respond safely.
Just a final question, Ms. Werner. This document, these 5 items, as well as all of the comments that were received, Mr. Campanelli's draft ordinance, were all of those reviewed with you and discussed over several days, weeks with city staff, council, et cetera?
Yes, we did discuss all of the comments and discussed how we could make changes if we needed to make changes to address them. So yes, we had a lot of discussions about them.
Thank you.
Any further questions of our staff or our council? Councillor Kaplan?
So this is a question for our staff. I understand that if we pause this and don't approve this, that the current ordinance remains in effect and controls all decisions about approving permits. Is that correct?
It will control large cell tower placements, but it won't be dealing with small cell. So you don't have the restrictions or the regulations that you would otherwise have. That's why we're doing this.
So it doesn't control small cell, meaning that small
sorry.
So small cell wouldn't be regulated, so it could simply be installed? Or what are you
Yes.
saying? Yes.
Yes. So if Verizon wants to come in tomorrow and give us an application and we don't have a cell tower or we don't have a small cell ordinance, there's nothing we would be able to do to prevent them. They have the right to do it.
Our current ordinance doesn't cover it, and therefore it doesn't give us that. Right?
Ms. Werner, I'm not sure, would there be parts to our ordinance that would cover that? I guess there would be. We have franchise agreements and other types of things, but.
Right, there would be just sort of generic protections that you need some sort of authority to be in the rights of way of the city. So there would be that, but the FCC has said that if you can't impose any aesthetic type criteria unless they are in writing and published prior to receiving an application. So if you got an application tomorrow, you would be able to require a franchise agreement from that company, and you could try to address certain deployment-related issues in a franchise agreement, but the shot clock would be running, so there wouldn't be a whole lot of time to negotiate it. And then also, like I said, some of this aesthetic criteria, which really are kind of a huge way of regulating where things go and how they will look, you would not be able to enforce it all, because it's not in writing and published before that application came in.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I believe I heard a few minutes ago when Councillor Dale and Attorney Warner were going over the list of questions. And I believe that what was made mention is that at the end of the back and forth, that Mr. Campanelli, staff, and council have gone over this list, and that's how we came to this ordinance. Is that what I heard?
Mayor, if I may.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Councilor Duquesne, Mr. Campanelli's draft in full was submitted and was reviewed. All 53 pages of it was gone through, and it was compared against what we have. Ideas were taken from it. We modified things before this draft was put in and so forth. So yeah, it was reviewed, not with Mr. Campanelli. We offered to meet with him. I don't know I can't speak to why we didn't, but the offer was out there. But we did review the draft in full.
So my question is that, so it was reviewed, however, some people that I did not hear that were invited were some of our citizens in our community that have been working on this for the past 6 years. And that's where my concern lies. We were here and we listened for an hour or more of our constituents who have devoted 6 years of their lives to study and education and bringing this forward. So my question again is, why didn't we have our constituents at the table having the conversation and taking the deep dive into this to create this ordinance?
I'm sorry, but I sat down with our citizens before on the last ordinance, and I did everything they wanted, and here we are. Back at it. I have sat down with all these, with listening to all this, and thank you. So at this point,
I know that I believe you met with some of our constituents. However, what I am asking is that with the information that's been going back and forth, I don't want to belabor this or beat this up either. Do we have any applications pending right now?
I can't speak to that.
Yeah. So we're still in the question and answer. Do you have any additional questions, Councillor Duquesne?
No, not at this time. I'm going to go.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Okay. The floor is open for a motion on, make sure I read this ordinance correctly. Ordinance 3234, amending AMC Title 16 Telecommunications and the Resolution 2024-07. So we would take this potentially in two if the first ordinance moves forward.
And if I could, I would need to help you with reading in that new piece of language that we wrote in from last week, or from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So go ahead and make your motion, and I'll add the language to it.
Okay.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve second reading of ordinance number 3234, an ordinance amending AMC Title 16 Telecommunications and establishing standards for telecommunications facilities in the city of Ashland.
Okay, and then if I may, I will add this one section. I have to read it in full for you so that you will say then at that point that you would move to add that to the language you just did. So in this case, it is would be at AMC 16.12080, section 2B, section B, thank you, 3. And it says, the Public Works Director shall not issue a permit subject to discretionary review unless the applicant has held at least one local community meeting attended by at least one representative of the applicant to inform members of the surrounding area of the proposed telecommunications facility. Meeting documentation shall be provided to the Public Works Director not later than 45 days after the date of the applicant submitted the application, unless the applicant and the Public Works Director agree in writing to a longer period of time and to toll any applicable shot clock to act on the application, and shall include the following. A copy of the mailing list will be sent to the city and to properties within 300 feet of the proposed facility. And I'm going to go down to E here in a second. B, a copy of the notice of community meetings mailed 1 week prior to the meeting. C, a copy of the newspaper ad placed in a local paper 1 week prior to the meeting. D, a summary of issues raised during the meeting. And E, the names of the applicant representatives in attendance.
My motion includes that language as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councillor Dale, do you care to speak to your motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor. As with everyone else here tonight, I'm going to allow myself only 1 minute. I want to sincerely thank everyone who has been involved in this years-long, rigorous, and certainly emotional discussion. Throughout this, and indeed any process, we will undoubtedly disagree on some of the analysis. That is how the process is designed to work. Every single email has been read, every in-person phone conversation, every testimony given at public forum has been genuinely considered, researched, and debated in good faith. We continue to listen to each other, and the hope is that we will continue to engage in healthy, civilized, and respectful discussion. But to be clear, being heard does not always imply that we will always come to the same conclusions every time. All of the documentation has been reviewed. The exact language may not be what each individual may like, as is frequently the case as bodies work through complex issues. However, the language, intent, and maximum authority that this ordinance gives to the City of Ashland's by law is clear. I appreciate everyone here, and that's why I made the motion.
Councillor Bloom.
I have nothing to add.
Any further discussion? Councillor Hanson.
I'll start. I know this is an emotional issue, and it's a health-related issue for many people in this room. I have personally met with Kelly Marcatulli and Alan Rathsam, and members of the Oregon Safer Technology. And I have reviewed the information that's passed through my desk. I've also met with other members of the community, physicians who presented information as well, and also members of the community who are technology folks that have another point of view. I am saddened by the threats and the theatrics in this room. It is important that we respect each other and that we respect this process and that we move forward together. This is an ordinance that is not cast in stone. This is something that we move forward with. This community can make changes and do things. We are not beholden to anything other than ourselves. So it is with that as an elected, I'm here to represent you, and I truly believe I am doing the best I can. So I thank you for your input, and I look forward to working with you on other issues, and I'm sorry that there is such passionate disagreement here in belief systems. And I'm supporting this, and I thank this council for their hard work and their respect of everybody in this room, and that is the Ashland that I love.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor. I would like to thank everyone for their resilience, their knowledge, and their respect. These last years that we've been working and listening to each other, I've been listening to you, and I know others have too. I've only felt respect. Something that I'll say quickly is that 5G is a moot point. We all know that it's here, but I'm a firm believer it's not what we do, it's how we do it. I have to listen to the community, and that's who I am. I'm here because of you, our constituents. You've been resilient, you keep coming back, and I appreciate that, and I hear you. When I think about everything that I've heard, that we've all heard, and that you've shared in this room tonight, what a wealth of information. About 3 times I heard the word Constitution being said. And the first 3 words in the Constitution are "we the people." And I believe in the people. And I have to stand on principle, your principle, of coming back, your strength of the work that you have done and what you do. So I will not be supporting this ordinance. Something that was said earlier, it's an ordinance, it can be changed, but I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yes, I can be very brief, I think. I want to thank everybody for coming in and speaking with us. I've listened very intently. I appreciate the attention to the 5 points that were raised by Andrew Campanelli. I remember the discussion not so in a list like that last 2 weeks ago, but it was helpful to have that laid out. For me, this ordinance is better than what we have now. It's a step forward. I don't see any reason to stop to stop forward progress. I think we're better off where we approving this ordinance than not approving the ordinance and being subjected to the insecurities and lack of authority that we have with that. So I'll be supporting this ordinance.
Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a very complex item that we have been discussing for me 3.5 going on 4 years. Significant emails, considerable information. I have read it. I have clicked the links, I have watched the videos, and I am appreciative because it takes this type of exchange to get to better ideas. I am struck by the fact in many of the conversations I have had with folks advocating on behalf of the sensitivity to EMF, it was continually stated we have nothing, we have no protection. I want a level of protection more than what we have now. And right now, based on the conversation here this evening, we have next to nothing on small cell. So I do want a degree of something. And this does provide that initial measure. It is for that reason I hope you do feel heard, because I have been listening. And this is that first measure. And so if I have to choose between having nothing and this ordinance, I will be voting for it, because I do want that first measure. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for your emails, for the discourse, the conversations over the last 3 years. You are appreciated. I appreciate you. So thank you for being here tonight and for being here for the last 3 years, at least for me. I will be supporting the motion.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom? Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
No.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Thank you, Alyssa. One thing I would like to say before we move on to the next item on our agenda is that one of the things that I'm particularly disturbed about is the FCC's non-response to the court ruling. And in that ruling, they were specifically pointing out that they were not taking up the issue of non-cancerous impacts and impacts to the environment. And I will be reaching out to our congressional delegation to find out what they understand is behind the delay in the FCC responding to the courts. So again, thank you all for coming out. I appreciate all that I have been learning. And as we roll this out, I think what we know is that we need to pay attention to how it rolls out. And I'm quite sure that you all will be helping us pay attention to that. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for the information that you have shared with us. And thank you for coming out and engaging in such a respectful way on such a difficult topic. Yes, and now we move on to the second part of that, which is to deal with the design standards. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale.
Sure. I move to approve resolution number 2024-07, a resolution to establish design standards for small wireless facilities in the rights-of-way in the city of Ashland.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councilor Dale.
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilor Boone. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Alyssa?
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
No.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a very tight agenda still this evening, but we do need to take a short break just so that we can get up and move around a bit. So please make sure you are back in your chairs, councilors, by 8:30. By that, we need to stay on close time. Councilors, please take your seat. Thank you. We are now picking up our agenda in the second reading of Ordinance 3236, establishing the Human Resources Department. Yes.
So there's nothing that's changed since the last time, as far as with the ordinance for your human resources. All the same arguments and all the same reasons for having it are still exist, and we would hope that you would pass it on second read.
Are there any questions for staff? The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
Okay, I move to adopt second reading of ordinance number 3236, creating a human resources department for the city of Ashland.
Is it 3236?
Oh, gosh, do we? Yeah, okay.
It is, that's correct. Okay.
After last time, yeah.
And Councilor Hanson, you were seconding?
I'll second that.
Councilor Bloom, do you care to speak to your motion?
No, I mean, we spoke to this last meeting, so I'm comfortable with that statement.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, just to reiterate what was said last night, the establishment of the HR department is critical for an organization of our size to really give care to cultivating all the things that are getting us to a employer of choice and the awesome city that we are reflected in our policies and our procedures for our staff. We care deeply for our staff, and we care deeply for the future of our city. And I think that this is really going to be an asset to all staff members. So thank you, staff, and thank you for this.
Any further discussion? Councilor Hyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we just take a moment? Because I'm looking at the packet right now, and it says an ordinance number 3235, an ordinance relating to amending AMC 2.28 to add the Human Resource Department. So I've got 36 in the agenda, and I've got a document here with 35. What is the right number?
3236.
Okay, so the agenda's right, the staff report is right, but the ordinance in the packet is wrong. Okay, very good. Thank you.
So that, Doug, just checking in that error can be corrected without needing to do anything to the motion.
Yeah, I believe that I've already given 3236.
If you can speak in, yeah, get in closer to the microphone.
Sorry, yes, I've already given 3236 as approved to form to our recorder, so that's the one that's ready for signature.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom? Yes. Hyatt?
Yes.
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 Hanson?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Thank you. We are now at second reading of the ordinance to amend the Ashland Fire Prevention Code, repealing and replacing AMC Chapter 15.28.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mark Shea, Fire Marshal, Ashland Fire and Rescue. There have been no changes to the proposed ordinance since the initial reading. As a recap, this ordinance reflects the updated state fire code, establishes the wildfire and community risk reduction within Ashland Fire and Rescue, deletes the section on mobile food vendors because that's now covered within the state fire code, so we don't need that redundancy any longer. And added a fire inspection frequency based on national best practices.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Councilor Hyatt, question?
No question. Happy to make the motion.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, if I may, one quick question, Mark, and thank you. I've neglected to ask this last time. How is this how do you think this is going to affect Ashland business owners when we think about fire safety and regulation and frequency of checks?
It will affect business owners initially or primarily by the time commitment, right? There's going to be some time commitment as inspections, and there may be a monetary effect to it depending on the code violations that are found. But the primary intent of the fire safety inspections is safety. So there will be a process to work with business owners to ensure that we are keeping them productive, keeping them financially stable while also maintaining safety in the city.
Thank you. And I think before you came on board, it was brought to my attention that that without these regular checks, we're actually putting ourselves more at liability and risk. So this is making us as a city more insurable, and also therefore businesses more insurable and more sustainable.
That's correct.
Yeah, this is a good thing for Ashland businesses. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hyatt.
I move approval of the second reading of an ordinance number 3233 titled, An Ordinance to Amend the Ashland Fire Prevention Code, repealing and replacing AMC Chapter 15.28, and advance the ordinance for enactment.
Councillor Hyatt, would you care to speak to your motion?
Only to say thank you for the good work for ensuring that the way this is written accounts for the state laws and state changes, and for looking out for our community here on the more micro level. The effort is truly appreciated. Thank you to you and your team.
Councillor Kaplan.
Nothing further, just I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Yes.
Kaplan. Thank you.
And now we are unfinished business. The Timberline contract, or also known as the Ashland Forest Lands Climate Adaptation Project funding.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Good to be here again.
Oh, yes, you need to put on your microphone, push that little silver button in the front. There you go.
New technology, just in 2 weeks. All right. Good to be here again. Chris Chambers, Forestry Officer, Ashland Fire and Rescue. First, a quick update on what was approved at the last meeting. In just 2 weeks, a lot has happened. This was the option that was approved last time. At the mayor's urging, I put some of the old numbers back in so that there's familiarity, and there's also a new table that you got in the packet as well that we can cover for any financial questions on the project. So what has happened since last time, we executed the contract with Timberline Helicopters at the reduced funding level. We started in on work at Siskiyou Mountain Park. The bulk of that park has now been thinned. Crews have been in there cutting trees. People have done a really good job. Thank you, everybody out there, of staying out of the work area. It is definitely very hazardous. I've walked plenty, and you can just be walking through the forest and a tree will fall that's leaning up against another tree with no warning at all. So I want to underscore that for this entire project, for everybody out there, that when areas are closed, we're really, really serious about it. It is a very serious public safety issue, and especially as the helicopter starts to fly, that adds a whole nother level of danger to it. So as closures become reality, which will probably be by this Friday for most of the popular trails. So far, we've been able to work around the trail system. I was really wanting to make sure things were open for spring break, and through the second spring break weekend, we accomplished that, and crews are now moving over to the Ashland watershed side of the project, and we're kind of triangulating in to the point where we have no option but to close some of the most popular trails by the end of the week. So I'm happy that we've been able to hold off until now, but those closures will be implemented probably by the end of the week, if not the weekend. On the pricing side, related to what we're talking about right now, we had a tiny scare in that we started cutting through the trees, a lot of dead trees in Siskiyou Mountain Park, and realized that some of them are rotting quickly, and whether or not they were going to have the value that we thought they were going to have, that's built into the pricing, was questionable. Actually had to have a mill representative come up from Wairika, look at a bunch of logs, and he reassured me that actually we're okay. That those logs will still have the value that their bid price included and was built into the budget. So that stressful moment. But then also Friday found out that we can add a biomass utilization component to the project that we didn't have before. Roseburg Forest Products started accepting non-merchantable log material down to 1-inch diameter. So things that we might have thrown into a burn pile either out in the forest or at the log landing now can be put onto trucks, sent over to White City, and we actually can make just a little bit of money on it. So it's kind of a win-win in that we don't have the emissions from that in burning it, and it leaves here and it goes to something constructive. What exactly they do with all that biomass, I'm not exactly sure, but it goes into a market and it gets utilized somewhere. So that will help. It's not going to make a big impact on the budget, but it's just a net positive for the project. So diving back in, where we left last week was the approval of option number 2. That moved forward. Option number 1 was still on the table. We ran out of time to fully discuss the budget. There was also a question as to why one of the costs, and just a quick reminder, option number 1 allows us the opportunity, it's not a guarantee, to work in the area that's hatched at the bottom of the screen next to Reeder Reservoir. So it's kind of in between the water treatment plant and Reeder Reservoir. An important piece of forest that is as part of the city's ownership. So looking specifically at the pile and burn expenses, which is a question that I was a little confused about, subsequently talked to the mayor so that we could try to figure out what question we were asking and answering. So, why is there the big discrepancy? Part of that is because there are offsets in actually utilizing the wood that's coming out, even though we're paying a lot of money for the helicopter. So just as an example of, in part, why the cost difference, I just want to illustrate it. So if we're doing work out in the woods and a tree faller cuts this dead tree, like the one in the picture, and it falls across the trail, in the helicopter scenario, the helicopter actually comes back, they hook onto this, they pull that, branches intact, the top of the tree intact, and that all goes onto the log landing, and it gets dealt with there, either by piling and burning the small diameter material, or now with the biomass, some of that small diameter material can go to a market and get utilized, and then the log itself is sold to a mill, and that's part of the offset of the cost of the helicopter and the machinery touching that piece of wood. But human hands don't have to touch it. It's mostly very efficient because it's all done by machine. A processor on the landing picks that log up, takes the limbs off it, moves the limbs, moves the log, goes straight into a pile and straight onto a truck. So it's a minimal amount of touches. That's all included in the helicopter pricing package. And it's pretty efficient, and we get that mill return, even though we're still paying out of pocket for the service of all of that happening, but we would also be paying out of pocket similarly for not having the helicopter. So what whole tree yarding looks like when they're taking all the limbs and they're moving them to the log landing is like in this picture. That is actually the helicopter that we used in the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project. It was on the internet. So a similar scenario, same tree. If we have a crew deal with that, so that would be the option 3. We don't touch it with the helicopter. There's no logging involved. That tree is going to stay there on the trail. One person cuts it, but now we have to add a lot more workers into the cost scenario. So it's going to take multiple workers with chainsaws to cut that log out of the trail, or to somehow move it, cut all the limbs off of it, and then take all those limbs and put them in burn piles. So there's a lot more hands touching the same tree. Labor costs are high. It's a dangerous job. We want to pay people well. Then we still have to have another crew come back after they've built this burn pile with those branches, and at some point in the future, burn the burn pile. So there's a lot of labor in that chain of events, and it's expensive, and we don't get any return on that at all. Versus with the helicopter scenario, we do get part of that back to us to help underwrite the project. So that's kind of the difference between those two scenarios and the costs. There's an example of Gary, in this case, on the Lomacasi crew, as one of the sawyers who comes back and does that kind of piling and burning. Any questions about that portion of it?
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Chris, I have a question. You mentioned in one of the scenarios, I believe it was 3, that if we don't have the helicopter, I'm looking at cost, and that means we'd have to pay people to do that, what's on the screen right now. And when you look at dollars and cents, what do you think, better helicopter or having labor?
The bottom line turns out similar to having the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
The big benefit that you get by having the helicopter is we're removing a significant amount of fuel out of the watershed. So
exactly.
The numbers of trees that are dying out there is staggering in some places. Hundreds of trees per acre. We can't, even if we cut the limbs off them and do burn piles, we can't have that much fuel next to our community at the base of our municipal watershed. Mm-hmm. We're leaving behind a lot of fire danger out there. That's going to stay with us for a long time. Mm-hmm. The science is pretty clear on that, and I've presented that in previous meetings. Larger diameter material and that much of it, when a forest is basically like collapsing in on itself, is really a detriment to fire danger to communities, but also to the ecosystem's function itself. And that's where you have incredibly severe fires that can actually convert forests into grasslands and shrub fields, and they never come back to forests.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And following on that, because today we're talking really about just that smallish zone now, because we've, this discussion we had last 2 weeks ago about the close-in areas to the town. But the City of Ashland Parcel 5, I think you call it, which is Jameson Gulch, if I've identified it correctly, where you and I walked a couple of months ago. That's farther away. Actually, that's even farther north of that, isn't it? Farther south of that, isn't it? Farther south. So that's a smaller area. It's farther away. How would you weigh the trade-off there, where not taking it out with a helicopter and leaving it there to create soil, yeah, there you go.
Got some slides on that.
Perfect.
So looking back at our data, and so I want to answer that question with a series of slides on answering questions about tree density and forest health, carbon storage, the fire issue, and fuels. So I've got several slides. So this is from our tree data summary back in 2017. The latest data that we have will be due for another update in 2027. That particular area that we're talking about is comprised of the subunits M1, M2, N, P, and Q, all of the arrows by them. Those are some of the densest forests we have out there. Relative density index is a measure of what is the possible carrying capacity of the land versus what is actually out there. So with the number of trees that are out there, we're approaching that like maximum carrying capacity. We're getting to the place where imminent tree die-off is happening, and it is happening, not quite as bad as some of the areas down below at lower elevations where it's been hotter and drier, but we're seeing that mortality start to work its way into the green forests from Rita Reservoir down in that area in the map. So this was back in 2017, before the drought was really bad, before the beetle epidemic got incredibly bad. So even then, this is showing that we really needed to intercede there to reduce the density, give trees the space they need to get bigger and get healthier and make it through these really stressful times with the drought. So that's just looking at the forest health piece of it. The fire management priority areas, that cluster, which is the kind of upper polygon and the lower end of it, you can see in the outline of Rita Reservoir there. I don't know if I can actually, does this show up if you use the trackpad on this? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can see
there
that.
It was.
Mhm.
There it is. Okay.
There we go.
So it's this section here. That is one of our fire management priority areas. So from that perspective, that's not a place where you want to put a whole bunch of fuel on the ground and leave it there. It's going to make firefighting a lot more difficult. It's not the objective of protecting the community per se, but that is kind of the gateway into the Ashland municipal watershed. So fires starting there. We do have work on all sides of it, which don't show up on this map from the Ashland Forest Resiliency. So this actually ties into a network of fire management zones called potential operational delineations. And then that is a key piece of it that ties from Ashland Creek through a ridge system out into the research natural area and into the greater watershed. So it is an important piece of fire management. The next, oops, there we go. So looking at just another way to look at the fire hazard, looking at soil productivity, and that's one of the concerns that people have expressed is we need all this wood to fall on the forest floor and start rotting to keep the soils healthy. Not untrue, but we don't need that much. Really the seminal paper on that in the science recommends keeping 5 to 10 tons per acre for soil productivity in warm, dry ponderosa pine and Douglas fir types, which is exactly that type of forest that we have there. And the amount that we have from that same 2017 data collection in that same collection of units, this time in yellow box, we have 11.45 tons, so it was 5 to 10 tons recommended, 7 tons, 33 tons in unit N, over 10 tons already in P, and then 38 in Q. So we're already at that soil health threshold, and in some significantly above it to where it's becoming concerning as a fire danger. We don't really need any more of that wood to hit the ground for soil productivity. Although it will happen as forests die and limbs and branches and needles fall down and just natural processes. But we are not in a position where we're lacking that and need to put a bunch of that fuel on the forest floor. The last area to think about there is carbon storage. There was a great paper done actually way back in 2009. Are leaving logs on site an effective way to store carbon on the landscape in a dry, frequent fire forest ecosystem, which is what we have. The conclusion in this study where they looked at all different types of treatments, so you could prescribe burn an area, you could actually go in and do logging and prescribe burn it, you can just do logging. It's a pretty common way to look at different outcomes from management scenarios. What they came up with in this particular study, this is from the Sierra Nevada, but a very similar forest type to ours, saying that, so in the conclusions here, C means carbon. Forest managers face an important decision. Should carbon stored on site be maximized to ensure greatest short-term benefit sequestration and potential revenue, that's from California, where they actually pay you to store carbon on site. So looking at prescribed fire mechanical thinning, which is the logging piece of it, and then mastication, which is something we don't do, chewing up and leaving it there on the ground. But results from the study indicate in fire-prone dry coniferous forests of the western United States that once burned frequently, totally describes us, the latter is the more prudent approach to storing carbon over the long term in the ecosystem. Basically, the assumption there is that you will have fire. You have to take fire into account. You can't just put wood up on the hill, assume it's going to stay there and not burn. Our own climate energy action plan shows that we are going to experience fire somewhere between 3 and 4 times in the amount of acres burned in Southwest Oregon than we have seen in the past. We're probably already going up that curve pretty quickly. So we can assume that our watershed is going to experience a wildfire. We've been threatened by them already in our community, so it's pretty reasonable to assume at some point in the next coming decades that if we leave a bunch of wood on the forest floor, it's going to get burned up instead of storing the carbon as we might want to intend it to do. That's the last slide on that.
Any questions for staff? Okay, we have one speaker who has requested to talk with us this evening. And 3 minutes, will that be appropriate, adequate?
That should be adequate. I can't go over all Chris's points piece by piece, but I'm going to go ahead and, again, I believe this project can be done effectively through dropping dead trees, limbing them, cutting the stems into 10-foot lengths to be left to rot on the site, providing soil stability, but also maintaining moisture in the forest, rotting dead logs. Even in architecture, timber frame construction has one of the best fire ratings because all that burns is the outside. It would take a really intensive fire, and the type of suppression that would be put on an Ashland fire, you're probably not going to ever see that type of fire that could actually burn logs on the ground. So I sent the council documents on the historic position on logging in the Ashland Creek watershed, logging-based fuel management. And the city at that time, after the '74 flood, and they made sure that those documents were recorded because they wanted to warn future councils that when we have done these logging projects for fuel management, they resulted in serious problems. And the type of landsliding soil movement and sedimentation that ends up in our reservoir. And granted, these are below the reservoir, but the same problems exist. Recently, after a minor storm, the Sultan's turbidity in the reservoir was so high that the city had to rely on the tap line in the wintertime to deal with it. And this is probably likely due to the logging that went on recently up there for fire management again. So in the context of this history of landsliding and severe erosion resulting from these fire management projects that utilize logging, the city should be very skeptical of these type of projects. And I really think that the city can look at an amalgamated project. I don't think Alternative 2 is responsible. I think the city's going to have to incur the cost of dealing with the entire property because you're looking at dead trees between the water plant and the reservoir, and you need to deal with it. But the cost will be flat if you deal with it in that area in a more ecologically sound way by leaving trees and biomass in the forest rather than continuing to extract. These are very erosive soils. Chris is bringing up sort of standard soils. This is decomposed granite steep slopes in a cool, moist canyon. There's nothing wrong with leaving trees and more coarse woody debris in these type of areas to really stabilize these areas. And the cost is flat, and it really sends a clear message too that we're going to go back to what the city was saying in the late 70s, that this type of fuel management isn't going to work for us. We want to see management in our municipal watershed that looks at ecological solutions and minimizes impacts of logging.
Thank you. Additional questions for staff? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I see Finance Director back there. Maybe it doesn't need to go. go to Marion, but I'm curious. So when we look at the additional cost for this option one, the $188,260, it's still a little unclear to me exactly where this money is coming from. I know that wildfire prevention is our top community priority, and I'm thinking this is a great investment, but I think we should also let our community know exactly how we're going to pay for this.
We might want to invite Marion. Oh, look at that.
Thank you, Finance Director Barry. Appreciate you coming up for this one.
Marion, if you can push that silver button again. There. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So we currently have $500,000 to recognize. Today is April 2nd. So sometime this month, more at the end of the month, once we do our reconciliation from unearned interest income from our investments that we've been proactively managing. More than likely, it might edge up to maybe $700,000 by the end of the year. But I can sufficiently state $500,000 for this project that has already been discussed with City Manager Cotta, that we can go ahead and recognize and divert over to the wildfire logging.
Okay, so in other terms, this is found money that we're investing in our community.
Yes, it is. It's investments that, due to higher balances and higher yields, proactively managed, where we've earned about that much.
Well done, City of Ashland. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The staff recognizes that wildfire was the #1 priority for the community when we got the feedback from the town hall. So in discussions, we feel like this is a prudent way of using this money, as we feel like that became council's #1 budget priority, and the things that you budgeted in addition to normal operating items with our current biennium budget.
Thank you. Other questions? I have a couple. Oh, did you have a follow-up? Okay. I have a couple. So Chris, the question around the 5 to 10 tons per acre, you had indicated that when you're looking at a ponderosa or Douglas fir type forest, that's sort of the standard. To what extent does that number take into account the microclimate of what we're dealing with in that particular reach?
That's more of a, oh, am I still on?
No, you've got to push the button again.
It has to be red. Got it.
Yes.
That's more of a general number applied across, broad regions, or what we call a plant association group, where you would say this is, a dry Douglas fir forest type. That doesn't say you should leave more in a particular draw that faces to the northwest because that's cooler. A lot of that has already been taken into account in the tree marking that's been done up there by Lomakatsi. We can certainly make sure that we're doing that, and that portion of the watershed of our survey done over the summer with the drone, that's the least impacted area by the tree die-off, so we actually have opportunities there. We're not going to be cutting big trees there, similar for the most part, except if there's excess dead on a ridge top or something like that. Where we have green intact forests, we're doing what we call thin from below. We're thinning the small trees first. So, to say that we're going to leave logs out there, we're not actually going to be cutting many logs that are of any size to leave behind. We're talking mainly 12 to 13, 14-inch trees and under. So if we're going to leave things out there, one, that size is less ecologically valuable. It stays on the landscape for a shorter amount of time than if we were leaving a 20 or 30-inch tree on the ground out there. And there are those also that are going to stay out there because portions of that area even are being impacted by the Douglas fir beetle outbreak. So there are opportunities, and I've seen trees that are not marked to go anywhere that are large size. They're going to stay out there. So we will have some of that large woody debris on the ground out there that Mr. Navickas talked about that we want to see. So I think we will be able to accomplish all those goals. And like we saw from the data, we already have more than that 5 to 10 tons out there. So we really don't need a lot more of it out there.
So if I remember the numbers correctly in that graph, we had a couple that were we had one that was right around the 10, we had two below the 10, and then one that was way up in the 30s and another kind of midway.
Yeah.
So it would seem that maybe in a couple of those areas, we actually might not be at the numbers we're looking at in that 5 to 10, especially given the erosion potential in that watershed. So is it possible for us to think in those specific parts of that project, the different segments, that maybe in the segment that's at 33 tons per acre, that we pull that out, but maybe we don't pull it out of the one that's closer to 5 or the two that are closer to 5. What does that look like for us?
It would be really hard to make that distinction out there right now. It's already all been marked, so that would take a significant investment to go back and unmark trees that are already marked in specific subunits, because they did that big block as one unit, the 5 on the map, but it's actually in the city's tracking and monitoring, it's broken out into those smaller units, the sub letters.
Right.
It would be difficult. One of the reasons why that one is lower is because of all of those, it's the most important fire management unit, and we have done a prescribed burn there. So we did reduce some of that ground cover or the wood on the ground through the prescribed burn. Again, that's 2017. That doesn't account for the last 7 years, and especially the last 2 years where there's been significant die-off. Those numbers have definitely increased. I guarantee that. How much? It really depends. The one that was lower, Unit P, is the most exposed. That's where the most trees are starting to die, even up there at the higher elevation. And I will guarantee this because it's already happening right now. Trees that Lomacazzi marked in February that were green are already dying today in that short amount of time. We are going to see a significant amount of trees in the future that die in that upper elevation. We have a lifetime supply, multiple lifetime supplies of coarse wood that no matter what we do, we're going to end up with more up there than we need. So I'm not concerned about entering in there right now, taking out the trees that need to come out for forest health, and at least maintaining the levels of coarse wood that we have. But I would be really surprised not to see that we haven't gone way up in a lot of those areas.
Yeah, I don't think the question is whether, in my mind anyway, is whether to cut them. I think the question is what to do with them once they're cut. And we do know the particular details of our watershed and the sensitivity that it has to erosion and what that means for our water and our flood potential. And so I think that's primarily where my concern is coming in from. Do we, I know that we measure the raw water quality coming into our water treatment facility. So, and maybe this is a question for Scott. Are we going to be watching that, or I guess maybe we could direct staff to be watching in particular what happens in significant rainfall events post-logging so that we can see if there is some sort of a correlation compared to what we've seen maybe in the last couple of years of large precipitation events?
We won't see any change because all of this work is below Rita Reservoir. There's no drainage into the reservoir itself.
Because the
we
intake's
won't-
higher.
Yeah, we won't be able to measure that there. But just, I think maybe to set the record straight on that, the data that Mr. Novickas is referring to, and I think that many people hearken back to in that, that the Ashland watershed is so erosive. Most of the erosion happens in really big storms, and it happens in mass wasting events or landslide events. Surface erosion is relatively rare in the watershed. I just don't see it out there. I travel all over the watershed. The only places you see surface erosion are roads and road cuts. The road system is contributing the vast majority of the erosion in our watershed, and that is what happened in the 60s and 70s. They built the road system that exists in our watershed was built then, post-1959 wildfire. It was paid for by clear cuts. So the combination of road building and clear cuts put a lot of sedimentation into the city's water supply and created a lot of problems between the Forest Service and the city government. We have not seen that kind of erosion happen in the treatments that have been done, say, under Ashland Forest Resiliency. We're selectively thinning forests. We're not creating giant clear cuts. We're not building roads. The effects on soil cover, we took a lot of data in the AFR project. It just is really non-existent, especially for helicopter logging. So, and I think we're overstating the erosion issue, especially on our lands. And we should always be mindful of it, and we should always be monitoring. But especially for helicopter, where a log is barely touching the ground, and it's getting lifted up, erosion is not an issue.
Are there any additional questions of staff? The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hansen.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll make a motion. I move that the City Council approve an additional $340,616.12 expenditure toward the Ashland Forest Land Climate Adaptation Project, of which $188,260 will be allocated from existing city funds.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah, we've talked a lot about this last couple of weeks, and thank you for all of the information and the public testimony and the financials around it. This is our community's #1 priority, wildfire prevention. I think this is a great investment. It's good to know these funding sources and our partners from Womakatsi getting the federal grant to help pay for it. And we're sorry for the brief inconvenience if anybody's listening still at 9:12 for the trail closures, but I just really want to encourage everybody to respect those trail closures. We're going to be able to get the work done faster, safer, and I encourage you to go visit our neighboring trail systems in the interim. So thank you all very much.
Councillor Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what Councillor Hansen said and just add that this was one of the first things that kind of came up when I joined the council. You talked to me about this when it was a Forest Lands Commission, not a MAC. And so, yeah, it's really cool as somebody that's, that's kind of, as others have said, renting this seat. You're here and you're permanent, and you've all been experiencing this and seen, progress happen. And it's just really nice to be part of that progress and to see it come to full fruition. So appreciate the work that you've done, and I'm really happy that this is finally happening. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, Chris, for the additional information that you presented this evening. I mean, for me, it's a tough issue. I think these are really complex processes, and there's great risks involved that we obviously want to mitigate as much as possible. Yeah, I wish that we had more time and more information, of course, but I appreciate that you actually do have quite a bit of information, even though some of it is quite old at this point. For me, I'll go along with this, but for me, it's in order to avoid an even a worse situation. I don't feel comfortable that with not going forward with this, but I also really do wish that there were ways forward that with more time that we could pay more attention to, more selectively leaving the wood on the ground. I mean, I appreciate your explanation of why that's difficult to do at this point, going back and doing it, but maybe we could have done that if we'd marked that area differently over the last couple of months. And it would have been a nice way to really kind of measure what's going on. So I will support this.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes, thank you.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Thank you. We now move on to the 2200 Ashland Street Ad Hoc Committee proposal.
Mayor, if I could, the parking contract, if we do not get to that tonight, we will not have a parking administration. So
Let's change the order then. We will take up the parking management contract.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cue us up there, Sabrina.
Great. So our contract with Diamond Parking will expire, and so we have gone through our typical solicitation process. So we had 3 respondents, and the panel picked to evaluate those have picked Laz Parking as the vendor we would like to go with for our parking administration purposes. And Scott and Marianne here are here for any questions.
So new technology. Good evening. So just to build on what the city manager said, we released a formal solicitation for parking management enforcement services on Oregon Buys, the procurement network website for the state of Oregon. We did receive 3 responses. We've reviewed those, and Laz Parking was the highest ranked proposer. They do have a local presence. They do manage the parking currently at the Medford International Airport. So the current contract with Diamond expires on April 30th. So approval of this contract will allow us to coordinate the next steps with Laz Parking moving forward for up to a 5-year period.
Questions of staff? Okay. Councillor Hyatt.
There we go. Scott, thank you. And I know it's in the packet, but I just want to make sure that it is communicated clearly. The way the contract is structured, it is a set fee for contract. There are no quotas for ticketing. There is no incentives in order for the parking management company to come back with a certain number of whatever in a given month. It is a set fee per month to administer our parking. No incentives, no quotas.
That is correct. So there's a monthly overhead administrative fee for management of the program, and then there is the hourly fixed rate cost for the actual walking enforcement portion of it. There are no established quotas or anything. It's just to manage the parking regulations that are outlined in the municipal code currently in the downtown district and along First Street and Gresham Street, where we do have time parking.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Councillor Dale.
Just a quick one. Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of a what's happening relative to trends is actual revenues from parking in fiscal year 2023 were 194,000. 2022 was 134.6. To date, we have collected approximately 202,000, 202.8 in 2024. Like, I know I'm downtown a bit and I've gotten a couple, but why the jump? Is it actual more, just are we seeing more travel, or is it actual the same amount of people, just more overtime? I mean, can you explain that? I'm trying to actually tie it to economic development and kind of what's happening here from a trend standpoint, visitors, what's going on?
During the early phase of the pandemic, we weren't really writing citations.
We weren't really writing, or Diamond wasn't really citing as much as typical. They were more enforcing safety. And they also had staffing related issues, because of pandemic causes. And so as we've transitioned out of that, Diamond, the current parking operator, managed to stabilize their staffing and actually work the amount based in the contract that we had previously or currently with them. So they were able to fulfill those requirements, and that's why you see that uptick in actual citations.
So the uptick would otherwise be normal under a normal staffing, is what you're
Correct.
saying? Over
Yeah.
time. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Scott.
Any further questions? The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Hyatt.
I move the local contracting board to find the proper contracting procedure was followed in the procurement of this contract, and further move that the city enter into a goods and services contract with Laz Parking Services.
Councillor Hyatt?
Thank you for the help in answering the questions and the good work, and for looking at the variety of options available to us. I specifically appreciate the scoring work that was done and the time that was taken in the procurement process. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
No further things. Thank you very much, Scott and the team.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Thank you. We move on now to the last agenda item for the evening, which is the ad hoc committee proposal for the site at 2200 Ashland Street. This is a proposal that I have drafted in the creation of an ad hoc committee. We've been talking about this ad hoc committee for quite some time, and we are at the point now where the homeless services master planning process is well underway, as we saw last night. And by starting the ad hoc committee at this point, we should be able to pull the information that comes from the homeless services master plan into the facility planning for this site, rather than waiting for that committee to completely get its work done before starting this particular committee. In the proposal, you will see that we have a couple of different sections of people that we're looking to bring together, including residents of the neighborhood around the 2200 Ashland Street site, as well as homeless service providers, people with lived experience in terms of being unhoused, and also city representatives, including our own housing specialists, as well as some of us here in this body. In the proposal, you'll see that I am proposing that I would facilitate it with another counselor. Counselor Kaplan has offered to be that person, but it's also open if anyone else would like to be considered for that co-facilitator spot. And then, of course, if any other counselor wants to come, as long as we only have one additional counselor at those meetings participating actively on behalf of the city, we can certainly cycle people through. Okay. So I know we've had this is the third time we've tried to get to this. So I'm sure folks have had a chance to read the full proposal. It is, of course, in the council packets. Are there any questions? Councillor Duquesne.
I'm getting a hang of this here.
Me too.
Thank you, Mayor, for putting this forward. My quick question is, and I appreciate it's inclusive of so many different people, and I think that's so important. How are we going to notify, how are we going to get those people? How are we going to put out this RFP? How are we going to put this out to get the ad hoc committee? Do we have anyone who's signed up, or how are we going about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our process for requesting applicants for committees, we have sort of a standard document. Given that we are asking for certain types of people, and we're trying to carefully put this ad hoc committee together with representatives of different groups, we have to ask slightly different questions in the application process. So if the council approves this evening, we will then make adjustments to the standard application process, and we will put it out to the whole community for a given period of time. In that time period, it's critically important, I think this might be what you're getting to, that we make sure that we get that out to the neighbors, to the neighborhood group, to the local business group on that side of town, as well as to our social service providers. And then during that same time, staff would be determining who would come into this process from the city staff. And again, when we come back again, I would be interested in finding out if anyone wanted to sort of permanently hold that third city council spot, or if we would be looking more to have a rotating ability to participate. Councillor Duquesne.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I was just saying that I would be willing to hold that spot along with Councillor Kaplan.
Okay. So if anyone else is interested in that, please let me know. We still have the ability after this evening to make adjustments in terms of how this representation is happening. I also want to just point out that because I live in that neighborhood, I have reached out to our legal department to make sure that there isn't any type of conflict of interest in that space. And I've been advised that given that there isn't a potential financial benefit to me one way or the other, that shouldn't cause a problem. So, but I just wanted to let the council know that I've been considering that, and if anyone here feels that is any sort of a conflict, to please reach out to me between now and when the ad hoc committee gets started. Councilor Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess, to kind of touch on the membership question since it came up, what are we looking at in terms of the composition of membership, right? So it's broadly, okay, people from the neighborhood and people, service providers, but I'd really like to have a conversation, really nail down what the balance of that is going to be, because I think the balance is a really important point.
So that is a really good question. What I've put in the proposal is that the city wouldn't be voting in that space. So any member of the city council that's involved in this or staff is there on an informational space. When we look at those other elements, you could see how simply saying 1/3 in each direction doesn't necessarily balance the committee. So what I would be looking at, and it doesn't have that level of specificity here, but what I would be looking at doing is making sure that we've got an equal side that has people with lived experience being unhoused and service providers, and then an equal side of neighborhood representatives. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, I was same thing. I was just kind of coming up with ideas, and it seems like 3 members from service providers, 3 members from the unhoused community, and then 6 members from the neighborhood and businesses in that region. That seems like it'd be a good balance of interests.
Yes, and that makes 12 people, and when you add city people in, that starts to get to a size of being unwieldy. So what I would like to do is to simply say that there's an equal number on either side of those.
Sure.
And we see who applies, and we see what is appropriate. We may not have exactly those numbers that come forward for these different elements. And so, but certainly if the council were to say to balance that ad hoc committee in that way so that it's equal on each side, then I think we can certainly do that. It would be more likely that it might be 4 on each side or 5 as opposed to 6.
Yeah.
Councilor Bloom.
I have a high degree of confidence in your ability to facilitate a large group, but I take what you're saying. If I could, I have some questions too about the discovery phase.
Yes.
I mean, again, you're going to be facilitating this, so I'm sure that some redundancy will be taken out. But when we talk about current needs regarding homeless services, I feel like the subcommittee is working on that, so I'm sure that there's going to be cooperation and kind of watching what they're doing and what's coming out of that so that we're not duplicating processes.
Entirely. That's exactly where that element is coming from, is the assumption that it would feed directly in from the process of developing the homeless services master plan.
Okay.
I don't intend to have this ad hoc committee go out and repeat any of the work that they've been doing.
I figured.
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, but we do need to get a motion on the table before 9:30 if we want to have a decision this evening.
I won't ask any further questions.
Okay. We can pick up questions again once we get a motion.
I move to accept the proposal for the 2200 Ashland Street Master Plan Ad Hoc Committee as presented.
Second.
Would you care to speak to your motion?
I'll let the questions continue. My concern has already been answered, so thank you.
Great. Roll call, please, Alyssa. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're back to questions. Councilor Bloom. It's been a night.
Thank you. It has. I'll be brief because I don't like going over. I'm curious, it says City Council's commitment to climate change mitigation, and I'm curious how that is relevant to the discussion of a site plan for 2200.
Yes, I think it's relevant to any sort of infrastructure project we have.
Okay.
So one of the unfortunate things that we too often see is we pit climate goals against housing goals, and that can fall also into goals around unhoused people. Since this is an infrastructure project and it's a physical property, we want to make sure that we communicate to the ad hoc committee that this is also a priority of this council.
Great. Yeah, I have no other questions. I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I look forward to the work, and definitely no conflict of interest. I mean, I think the three of us are within one block of that building, so that could be complicated.
Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I see on the proposal here that it's anticipated that the first meeting would start mid-April.
Yes, that won't be the case. We've been carrying this over because we've tried to get to it for two different cycles of our meetings, and so that we would amend that to say, we're looking to get this started in May.
Okay, and for those of us that are interested and curious to learn more and perhaps not be a part of the committee but would like to attend, what are expectations that community members can have about participating but not being one of these members? Is it open to the general public, and will it be noticed? All those things.
Yes, it'll be a formal body of this council, and so meetings will be public. They'll be noticed just like they would be for a typical committee. So the public will be able to attend and offer feedback. And part of this process, so that you also know that element, is that there's a section in here under the options development phase where it's talking about 2 community engagement events, as well as integrating that feedback. So in addition to the regular meetings, there will also be at least 2 opportunities for the public to come and hear what the draft looks like or where the committee's getting to, and to be able to give feedback. So feedback will be able to be taken in both of those meetings, and then also the typical standard meetings.
Great. And the last question, if you mind, it will be at 22. Will the meetings be at 2200?
I don't think so. I would anticipate that we would do site visits to 2200 as part of that, maybe kind of field trip type elements. And if we do include that as part of this, and this would be a question back to Doug, is that considered then a formal, if we do a site visit, which we would do, would that be considered a formal public meeting, and then would the public be allowed to come onto the site? Yes, that's what I thought. So, and we've had that. We opened it up earlier last year before we opened it up as a shelter and allowed people to come in. Yeah. But I think now that we're at the place of planning the facility, the master plan, it's a good idea to do that again, so that anyone in the community who didn't get a chance to come through it and see the site ahead of time last time has an opportunity to do it during this master planning process.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, any additional questions?
Just a quick question, Mayor. Thank you very much for this. This is outstanding. Quick question along the same lines of Councilor Hanson. As far as involvement and opportunity to participate, you had mentioned earlier about councilors, and I certainly defer to Councilor Duquesne and Councilor Kaplan, but you had mentioned that other councilors may just be able to pop into a meeting. How would it be? I guess question number one is, what would be the frequency or the timeline, I guess, of what you're seeing for meetings, number one? Number two is would that be something that we would just work through you, communicate in advance in case some, like myself, wanted to attend one and interact in real time?
Yes, those are good questions. I'm anticipating that it would keep a similar cadence to what the Homeless Services Master Plan is doing, which is every 2 weeks. It's a pretty intense process, but it's designed to get us somewhere relatively quickly. We want to make some decisions about that facility without waiting for monthly meetings, and so it would be that faster cadence. Typically, what we would do is to simply identify the counselors who would be permanently part of that ad hoc committee. What I've done in leaving it open a bit is to find out how much interest is here in being heavily engaged in this. If there is interest in being heavily engaged, then we have to figure out what to do with these slots, and Doug would help us identify what that means. So between now and when we come back and actually appoint people to this, we'll clear all of that up. But in the meantime, if individual counselors can let me know what is your level of interest in being deeply involved, then we can get the structure set up appropriately. But any counselor can come and observe the meeting as long as they don't participate in it, is my understanding, Doug. If they want to sit back and just listen to the conversation, they're allowed to do that as a public citizen. We may not want to. We may not want to do that because of how it appears, but that's why that's why I need to know your level of interest in this, and then Doug and I can sit down and figure out what is the appropriate structure.
If you would, I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
So next steps would be just let you know.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Next steps are just to let me know your level of interest and how deeply you'd like to be involved in this process. Something to remember is that this master plan, like all other plans, will come back in front of this body for a discussion and a vote and just a similar process. So, so this is going to be a recommendation to this body that comes out of this ad hoc committee. Any additional questions? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. It has been already done. Look at that. And it's even been seconded. We got it. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Wrestle that technology till we get it.